All right.
Got you.
Hello. 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 Hi. Hey. Hi. Hello. So we were just warming up and talking about other things, catching up a little bit. Let's
Yeah, it's
uh,
been a
let's
while.
introduce ourselves to our fans, to people, whoever's watching, listening. Like what you do and how we met, or like what
Oh, yeah, sure.
we are interested in talking about today.
Okay, yeah. I'll take that on. Well,
I'm,
Russ, it's
I'm
good
just,
to
I
see
just
you
piled it
again.
on you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I mean, to the diehard viewers, you've seen me twice before on the RTP way back when in like 2018,
Yeah.
maybe 2019. So yeah, that's how long ago Rusty and I met. I was working with the Peace Corps in Mongolia back then. I was in Arungai, but I would frequently come into UB, and so I don't even know. I think he was mutual friend, right? They had a party, and
Yeah.
then we
Yeah. We
just
did. Yeah.
met, and we completely disappeared. We were just talking movies in like
Yeah. We did.
a bar.
We just
So
created our
yeah,
own world there.
yeah, and so, that's what happened. We met then, we decided we'd do I'd come on the podcast. So the first time I showed up, we were talking about remakes and sequels, which is, like, still a huge conversation to
It
be
still
had, like,
is.
everywhere. And then I came back on again, and we were just talking about, like, classic movies and, like, do they last well with time, and we made some predictions, Marvel predictions. I distinctly remember yours ended up being far more right than mine, but, here I am going, "Okay, maybe they should have done my radical." They wouldn't be casting RDJ again as Doctor Doom.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Yikes.
neither here nor there. So yeah, I finished up in 2019, but I hung around kind of that Eurasia, Central Asia region, and I kept kind of doing research and interviews with people and just shooting the shit, talking about their local film industry, as well as just kind of the influence of Hollywood. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Can we make it? If it's not viewed as a good thing, can we make it a good thing? Is that possible? Those are kind of the big things that are on my mind these days when it comes to film and
Mm.
culture. And then especially looking at things like, okay, how can we in the West or the US in particular, how can we continue to evolve and grow our own kind of culture, whether it's literature or if it's film and television? What does film and television even mean? Are we having
Yeah.
conversations about animation as like a proper art form? And then how to forget that conversation for a second. How do we take this idea of we're a culturally diverse melting pot? How do we take those different cultures and incorporate them into storytelling that can be accessible to people who don't come from that cultural background?
Yeah.
That's kind of my lifelong mission. So I'm constantly trying to read up on it, meet new people, explore those things. And so, I mean, Rust, you absolutely helped push me into that properly. And I went, oh, instead of just thinking about it, I can actually start acting on it because there are
Mm.
people out there all over the world that want to have conversations.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that we can kind of catch up again after all those years. I'm back permanently stateside, so
Mm.
I think we can coordinate these things. Time zones are a little bit easier to do in
Yeah.
UB from where I am in the States than, elsewhere. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm glad to be back on. We're gonna talk about
Yeah.
well, the man of the hour is Zack Snyder. That was the
Yeah.
conversation we
As he
we
has
decided.
been for almost a decade now.
But I think if the conversation allows, I'd like to just talk about, I think, legacy, because
Yeah.
the more I thought about this and the more other events were kind of happening with other filmmakers of repute, good and bad, I started going, I think the whole issue with Zack Snyder is a question of legacy. So I think there'll be a few people that I'll kind of bring up, and I want to poke
Yeah.
your brain about that. I want to pick your thoughts and see what you think. So
I hope I'll have adequate
oh
knowledge or
no,
experience on view on
if,
that.
if anything, I think you'll know what's up. You'll have plenty to say when I bring up these people.
Yeah. So
So
after you left Mongolia, we didn't really stay in chat, but we were on connected on Facebook and things, and I really love reading your reviews. Right. They're few and far between. As I wish you would write more reviews, but
oh
and I enjoy them because like my English is, I guess it's fine, but I don't like I can't express my feelings or what I view about how I view films like you do. Obviously, it's not natural for me, but like I wish I could, right? Like I love reading your reviews. I was like, I can understand it really well, and I'm like, yeah, I wish I could write like this. I wish I, and also I'm like, I wish I could see this thing from this perspective. I wish I saw this. Like I really loved reading your reviews. So I was, in a way, I
Appreciate that.
guess we were in touch like that on film when it comes to films.
It's hard. My wife and I were gonna do like a full-blown social media unplug. So
Oh,
we're
okay,
like pulling out of Instagram, we're pulling out of everything. But the reviews, they were always few and far in between, that I will admit. And I only ever posted them to Facebook because I'm a very like lengthy writing
yeah,
person. I couldn't do it short and sweet, like, for Instagram or whatever. So that's really what I only ever use Facebook for.
yeah. Loved reading
Uh,
it, reading them.
but in Kazakhstan, I was making this stage production for this kind of like semi-autobiographical play about my time in Kazakhstan and the kind of complicated relationship I had with the country. And complicated is the wrong word, complex maybe, because that sounds more negative. Complex, because it was ultimately very positive. But one of the people I met there, who's now studying in London and is doing like stage production shit, she's like going crazy
Cool.
over there. It's great. She got me to finally sign up for Letterboxd. So I don't know
Oh,
if you're on
cool.
Letterboxd.
Awesome.
Yeah, yeah. I'm still very much an infrequent poster, but I went back to around the Mongolia years and I copy pasted all of the reviews and the dates I posted
Great.
them, so it's archived there. And then when I can, I've been trying to add new
Great. We'll
additions.
we'll link
You're up.
we'll put the link to your Letterboxd account in our description. So
Oh,
if
okay,
anyone
cool.
wants to
Send it.
follow
Yeah,
and read,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Oh, unfortunately, it's not in Mongolian.
yeah, it's in English, but they're great. Let me tell you, like they're
But
great.
oh man, yeah. Mini Monklor Nashik. Uh, Bad. I'm forgetting Ropenta. I'm
Yes.
forgetting all of it. Oh yeah, it's bad. And then when I was over there too, I was like picking up Russians, and now
Mm.
I code switch between Mongolian and Russian, and then I go, this is a sentence that does not make sense. But yeah,
All right.
I
So
miss the country. I'd love
sorry.
to come back now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wish
No,
you
keep
would,
going.
and when you do, it's gonna be awesome. We can catch up on a
Yeah,
lot more things
yeah,
when you do.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
All right.
All
So
right.
today we're going to talk about, like you said, Zack Snyder and question of legacy, and there's a whole lot of conversation about
Sure.
and around Zack Snyder. It's not specifically just about him, but So let's get that going. Where do you
All
want to
right,
start?
sure. Yeah, okay, so I know what prompted this was you had watched and you had a lot of thoughts about Rebel Moon, and I think it was part 2. Now I'm just gonna come out upfront and say I haven't seen it, so I'm not
No,
really gonna talk about
it's
that.
not Rebel Moon though. Like I didn't watch it. Full disclosure,
Oh,
but it
okay,
was the
alright.
conversation around it. I didn't watch it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And absolutely, I think it's something that I mean, that whole question about Justice League. So, I mean,
Yeah.
alright, I'm gonna name drop Joss Whedon so that we can circle back
Yeah.
to that as well, talking about legacy, and the whole Zack Snyder's Justice League. So, I mean, that I think, frankly, Zack is just a victim of the studio thing. Before we really got into this, we were talking about, okay, in some countries, maybe Mongolia, it's corporations or governments. Before it's really like committee heads who are like private individuals. Here in the States, as you know, it's like, exclusively private
Yeah.
individuals. But private individuals can be bought, they can be pressured by government, right? So, but really the face of the decision making, it's like a handful of select men, primarily old white men. But the handoff and the transition out from the DCEU to the DCU, run by James Gunn, I think overall was just horrifically handled. I don't
Yeah.
think it's necessarily Gunn's fault. I don't think it was. I think it was just a kind of bastard monster of outgoing leadership, incoming leadership, right?
And the
And
instability,
I,
like the whole instability at
yeah,
Warner Bros. Discovery now.
absolutely, right. And I think the problem there is the Zack Snyder question really is just a very clear, in my mind, representation of the problems that come up with this kind of management, right? That doesn't really care, or it has so many different priorities, they don't know how to handle it in a profit-based industry,
Yeah.
right? So at the end of the day, money is more important than, the loss of, Zach's daughter and, that kind of thing. And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, we need to salvage this instead of giving him time to, come back to it later, right? The industry, it's like a government, I guess. It's so laid out by years. They don't think about tomorrow. They think about today I'm going to plan what's happening 8 months from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now. And it's just so far laid out that it's impossible when you're in the middle of shit that you don't plan for to go, we need to stop everything.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of like big balls to do that. And
Yeah.
most Hollywood
And they
people
were not
juggling
gonna do
billions of
that.
dollars, they can't do
Yeah.
that, right?
If I'm not
So I think
mistaken, like whoever were running the film distribution, or no, not the film department of Warner Bros. And DCU were due for a bonus or something in the year, right? Like
yeah,
2017 or 16, and they had to release Justice League. And if they did, they were due for a bonus. And if they didn't, like if they delayed the film, they would have lost, I don't know, like was it 20 million or something? Was it Walter
it
Hamada? I
was
don't remember correctly, but
they well but that's the thing that's so tragic too, is the studio ended up losing a lot of money anyway.
yeah, they
And then
did.
when David Zaslav came in, because I think the DC thing was, at least as a division of Warner, was headed by this like Japanese American dude.
Walter
I can't
Hamada.
remember his name.
I think Walter
Yes.
Hamada.
Oh, it might have been. And I think he's since stepped down.
Yeah,
But
he
like
has. Yeah,
the at the top, there was an outbound president, and then David Zaslav
yeah,
took over. And Zaslav, I mean, I think he knows he can just be a villain in the masses' eyes, and he doesn't care. Because
yeah.
like with this recent
He
writer's
definitely
strike,
doesn't.
he and I think it was Bob Iger, right? Because he came back to Disney. Like they were saying some shit that there is no way you can paint this positively.
Yeah,
It is such a bad look, and
yeah,
they don't care. You know, the amount of money they stand to make at the end of the year, even if the studios don't churn out like films at all, is still, ungodly amounts of money
yeah,
that most of us won't see in our lifetimes. But I think that's really the thing, is the whole problem with him is not really him.
yeah,
The problem with him is he is just this figure that a lot of people can place a lot of value into. And I think for the fans, it's a sense of like powerlessness. Just you're gonna go on a ride with me, Russ. So just
I am
hear
in.
me
I'm
out.
in. I'm in.
All right, all right. It's like, to get very extremely political, it kind of reminded me of like Donald Trump.
Okay.
So with Donald Trump as a phenomenon in the US, and I remember Batuluk was president when I was in Mongolia, and everybody compared him because Trump had just gotten elected, and they were like, "Yeah, we love him because he's like ex-wrestler, businessman. He's our Trump. He's our
Strong man,
Trump.
whatever.
We would vote for Trump if we were Americans. Did you vote?" And I'm like, no comment. I didn't. But and it's like, but that's the thing. It's like I think people like that kind of projection. They like this whole idea. Because for them, he seems sort of relatable. Trump, or maybe Batu, like I didn't listen to him closely, but like Trump's whole thing is he says whatever comes into his mind. He doesn't really give a shit about the consequences.
Yeah.
And so on that first level, people are going, oh, that's like he's saying what I'm thinking, or what all of us are thinking. And we felt like we couldn't say it. He's speaking to me. I feel
Yeah.
seen, right? The memes in film, to bring it back, it's like, Ryan Gosling, he's literally me. For them, that section, they look at him and they go, Trump's literally me,
Hmm.
right? And I think for the fan group, it's a very similar thing. You know, Marvel was, if we look at it in that one very obvious level, Marvel had its dominance
Yeah.
for, I think, 5 years. And then they were already coming into the Avengers when Man of Steel dropped. So, I
Yeah.
mean, there was a lot of catch up that they needed to do,
Avengers
not
was
just in terms
already
of the
out.
show.
So, yeah.
Exactly. And it's like, they had a lot of catch up, not just in terms of the literal number of years, but the amount of like storytelling they needed to
Yeah.
get to. So right from the jump,
Characters
you
to
had that whole
introduce.
thing. Exactly. Leading into that DC versus Marvel thing. So you had that percentage that was DC's better, or I'm only DC. And they're going, we got to play catch up. And then, they see this guy who is really quirky, but he represents something. I think when I first spoke with you all those years ago,
Yeah.
I was saying, oh yeah, it was like Variety or THR, one of the trade publications, did an interview about him. I can't remember how long ago it was, maybe like around Batman v Superman. And it wasn't exactly super complimentary.
Yeah.
It painted Zack Snyder as like a really fucking weird guy. And he had like decorative skulls on his desk, and like he had a bench set, like a bench press in his office, and like during the interview he was like lifting weights. And it's like, so I mean, right, there's this already, you have this strong man kind of, he's quirky, he's sporadic. He clearly, when you listen to him talk, he sounds like he has ADHD. Like none of his thoughts are coherent. None of his thoughts are super well
Yeah.
thought out. And I think there is that kind of Trump effect, that Batulag effect, where he kind of like it appeals not just to those people who are like, I'm DC more than Marvel, or I'm only DC, and we got to play catch up. We got to, beat them at their own game. You also have people going like, oh, he is literally me and what he says, feels, and thinks. And also there's that wish fulfillment. I wish I could be president. I wish I was a strong man. This guy, he's not that much more talented than me. He's just more fit. But he has things that are attainable, but that I don't have right now.
Yeah.
So I will project onto him, right? So I think that's kind of the psychological thing about
Mm.
him in particular that's
Mm.
really fascinating. And I think that's the question is the last element of this political thing is the Justice League thing, right?
Yeah.
So we were talking, studio heads didn't give a damn about him, even in the face of tragedy. I think it's pretty clear that the studios, and you mentioned the bonuses, they didn't give a shit. They
Yeah.
didn't
No,
give a
they
shit
didn't.
about what
No.
happened with him and
No.
his family. They didn't give a shit about, the nature with which this tragedy happened and how it was this close. They didn't give a damn.
Yeah, just for
Absolutely.
context for listeners, his daughter passed away during the production of Justice League, so he had to step
Yes.
away. Yeah.
Yes, that's why he couldn't see this through. I think he had shot what 65, 70% of it, right? It was like a good percentage was done, and then if you just had like he was in the editing room basically, and
Yeah.
he had all of the B-roll, which became the Zack Snyder's Justice League thing, or the
The
context
Snyder
of it,
cut.
the Snyder cut. And so I mean that's the thing, right? So you have like this person who's thrust into this tragedy. So I mean everybody loves an underdog story, everybody loves a
Yeah.
hero story, right?
Yeah.
So he's pushed out. Joss Whedon, who I'll circle back to yet again later on, talking about legacy, is brought on to kind of, save this film so that it can meet its deadline, so that the executives can make their bonuses, right?
Yeah.
Or if not, do what Zaslav likes doing now, which is cleaning house and make it a tax write-off that the
Yeah.
public will never see.
Like they did with
I mean,
Batgirl.
Bad Girl and that Wile E. Coyote movie,
Yeah.
the mixed media one. So I mean, it's like he's a victim as well. And so I'm not going to take that from him. So you have this percentage of people that are buying into him as an individual. They're projecting a lot onto him. And then they see that even this guy can fall. The election can be quote unquote stolen in 2020, right? It's
Yeah.
that thing. And so then they buy into him even more because they're going, you are a victim of the same system that doesn't give a damn about me.
Yeah.
And if they don't give a damn about you and you are in this position of access and power, then clearly I need to back you, right?
Mm. Mm.
So I think that's what's happening as well. And then finally, it was the release of the Snyder Cut,
Yeah.
right? And that the fucking studio didn't give a shit about that either. They
No.
really weren't going to do it. That's why. And so their thing was, oh, okay, well, Zach says he has enough footage. Spoilers, he didn't. He had to bring them all together and then, put down what, like 40 million or something like that in
Yeah. Reshoot.
actually shooting stuff. Yeah, for this Snyder Cut. But why did Warner Brothers or Warner Brothers Discovery or whatever the hell they're called now, why did they greenlight it? Was because they were coming out with HBO Max.
Yes.
They were coming
Exactly.
to the stream. So for them, their thing was, oh, okay, we have this angry, rabid fan base that is like almost cultish and very Trumpinian around this guy. This guy who's kind of teasing this fan base in very Trump manner, right? He's
Yeah,
getting
he
them
did
going. He's kind of
on a
saying
different
like,
social
you know,
media, like Trump.
right, yeah, right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
It's very Trump if you think about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Trump's thing is just very dogged and dog whistly, but Snyder too, and engaging with that because he knows what they want because they make it very clear.
Yeah.
And so I mean, that's the other element. And then the final thing is they're going, well, we're a profit industry and we can make money if we get people to sign up for this new streaming service because the only way they can see this 4.5 hour goddamn monstrosity is to sign up for Max, right?
Yeah.
So it was a win for them. I think their thing was, is it feasible? Do people want to? Will they sit down? Is the Netflix model that where we know that people are going to sit down for 4.5 hours and watch something like continuously? And then they said, no, market research is saying it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If you start and you get maybe 5 minutes in, we chalk it up as a view.
Yeah.
It
It's a
doesn't
view.
really matter if you're still with us by 4.5 hour mark, right?
Yeah.
So then they said, why not? The amount of money that he needs to finish this thing is not offset by the projected earnings that we can get by putting it on the streaming. So to the bitter end, the studio doesn't really care about him. They're
Yeah.
turning him out as like a money industry in the same way that, like, the government, when Trump came on, drained the swamp, whatever, it didn't really happen because he knew that the system was rotten. He just could ensure that a group that was previously ignored or deemed a joke or not taken seriously would come out and rally behind him. I
Yeah.
don't think Zack Snyder is frankly smart enough that he's thinking about it in this kind of sinister, like, way.
Yeah.
But I do
Many
think
steps
that
kind of
a
way.
lot of the phenomenon of Trump
Yeah.
is very much happening with him. And I
Hmm.
just think the weird thing is Zack Snyder isn't even really that smart. Not that
Hmm.
I'm saying Trump is, but like he's not that smart, as evidenced by any time he opens his goddamn mouth. But then he's also not exactly very good at his craft.
Yeah.
I think it was very fascinating. I'll let you jump back in on this
Mm.
because I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts. But like, I don't even know who it was, but he got rid of, uh, I think with Rebel Moon, and then with that, what was that zombie movie he did for
Army of
Netflix
the
too?
Dead.
Army of the Dead, right, with Batista.
Yeah.
He by that point, I think, had phased out and was doing either his own cinematography or he was also doing his own editing.
Yeah, I think it
One of the
was.
2,
Yeah.
if not both. Yeah, and I think he continued that with the other movies, this Rebel Moon stuff he's doing with Netflix as well. But, like, Watchmen, even, like, the Man of Steel stuff, he had Larry Fong, and I recently watched Lost for the first time, and that was, like, Larry Fong's claim to fame as a
Hmm.
DP, was he was the cameraman for the pilot
Yeah.
and the first few episodes of the first season. And then from there, Zach headhunted him and then hired him to do his post Dawn of the Dead remake stuff. So yeah, I mean, like, I, do I chalk it up to Zach's visual style isn't really even his? It's like Larry Fong.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, how deep does that rabbit hole go? I think Zach is a cool guy when it comes to having cool ideas. And if you listen to his interviews, right, he always prioritizes cool shots and vistas. He
Yeah.
doesn't really prioritize the substance of the source material
Yeah.
he's lifting from. He doesn't really, as a story man, he definitely suffers in that regard. And I think he's certainly proof of one of those, like, that Michael Bay era USC grads. Like, if you have a good writer, and this applies to Michael Bay as well, you can salvage something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you can make it work.
Yeah.
And with Zach, I think he is now in 2024 so emboldened by that cult around him that he can take on more of the role. He has less
Yeah.
people who can curb it, and then the proof is in the pudding. You have Rebel Moon. So I
Yeah.
mean, that's it. That's the case one. That's case A with Snyder, and that's kind of how I see it. I don't know. What do you
Yeah.
think, Matt?
Yeah. Like you said, like with Michael Bay and Zack Snyder, like I think if they partnered up with better writers than
Mm,
themselves,
mhm.
they could be making cohesive films with not every movie have to have like incredible screenplays or whatever, right? Like things can be just for entertainment. They can be just very surface level, but when it comes to Michael Bay and most movies with Michael Bay and Zack Snyder's films, they really lack that cohesive storytelling. Like you said, they're not story people. Michael Bay really loves his 36 whatever shots and close-ups on teenager kids on, like, boobs and whatever, explosions and Bud Lights. Same with Zack Snyder and his, like, slow-mo shots and everything. So in that sense, it's the same. And when it comes to the social media thing, the cultish following thing, I think you've, Rick, really like nailed it there. I really haven't like thought of it in that kind of way, and I think you really put it, yeah, right there. And there are a lot of similarities to think about when you think about it, right? Like if the what was the weird other social media platform he used to like keep posting things about from the behind the scenes from the shooting of Justice League? Like it was even before the Snyder Cut thing was a thing.
Right.
Like I think it was just around Joss Whedon's version releasing, right?
Right.
Even
Well, I don't know if
before.
it was Instagram or Twitter. It might have been like, God, was it
No, it
Truth?
was this. I don't know. Like, it was this weird other social media that was
Right.
some like it was similar to Twitter, but at the same time it was focused on posting photos, like Instagram, that kind of thing. And it was
Was it Tumblr?
No, it wasn't a Tumblr. No, it wasn't Tumblr. I don't know. Like it was some
I'm looking
weird
it up
truth
now.
social kind of social
Yeah,
media
right,
for Zack
right.
Snyder. But yeah, his thing, and I don't know. Like he didn't help because I think right around maybe Man of Steel, maybe a bit after that, I think he had a lot of credit in the bank for a lot of film fans, not just like his stylish like slow motion or R-rated like bloody gory shots or whatever. Not just that, but generally I think he had a style. And when like you said, right, like the cinematographer, the DP had a lot of input there, but that's still like his like shot to hire him, I guess. But so that's helpful. So that was a thing before or around Man of Steel, right? Like he had a style, he
Hmm.
had a distinctive
Right.
style where nobody else was really making movies that looked like his, that felt like his. And I
Hmm.
would I would actually argue that one of his like really 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 good movies is the animated one, The Guardians of Gahul.
Yeah, Guardians of Gahul, I've heard
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
probably one
it's
of his
it's
best. Yeah.
incredibly good. I'm pretty sure he's not the only one worked on that, but it's still his vision. It's still his thing, and it was really good. Like I think it's really underrated, and it's not talked about often enough. I wish it would be talked about in, more than it is. And one of my favorite films of all time. I'm not saying it's good, like great. I think it's good, but it's not great. But it is Watchmen. I love
Mm,
Watchmen, and a lot of Watchmen like fans, the graphic novel fans, uh, really hate the movie, and I don't. I am a fan of the graphic novel. I have like two different versions of it here, but but. But I really love the movie, like especially the ultimate cut with the black fader animation put into
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think when you have help, I think when Zack Snyder has help when it comes to only filmmaking, right? Has help in writing, especially. I think he can do good things. And when you watch Watchmen, yes, it is over stylized. Yes, there are too many like gory or slow motion action shots, but it's almost like a page to page, page to screen adaptation
Right.
of the graphic novel.
Exactly.
It's great. Like nobody really could, I think, do it like that. I guess there were a few things that were lost in translation in adaptation. Yeah, I would agree with that. But at the same time, it's a different medium. It doesn't have to reflect like
Right.
the
Sure.
exact thing. So I appreciate Watchmen and Guardians of the Whole a lot. But then, since Man of Steel and especially around Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, and since then, excluding of course the tragedy that happened to his family, he didn't help, right? Like you said, like his interviews, his tweets or whatever social media posts, he just stokes the flames all the time. Like I wish you would stop with the Zack Snyder, like the Snyder cut thing now, right? I wish you would stop with all the Rebel Moon. I mean, Rebel Moon started as a Star Wars movie pitch that was denied, that was ignored, whatever, right?
And it's
And
very
he pitched
clear
it
from
to
what I
Lucasfilm. I
understand.
think,
Yeah.
yeah, I think he pitched it to
Very clear
Kathleen
that
Kennedy,
it's
right? Like if you
mm,
understand it correctly. And then why did he have to like go and try to make it into a whole thing? And then there's this director's cut thing. Like why? I mean, you're releasing the movie on a streaming service. There's no need to like release a movie in a state that you didn't want it to be, and then go on to release a different version that's hour longer or something. Again, like I don't know, man. He just doesn't help himself. I don't think. At least with Trump, he's
then
helping himself. You know what I mean?
yeah, but that's the
To
thing though.
whatever
I
end.
think I think with Trump, it's like he also is his worst enemy. I think, he needs people around him who can curb him, understand why he's so popular, understand why, and then kind of give him the discipline to control when and how he relies and utilizes the things that make him popular, right? It's weird. When
Yeah.
that thought entered my brain and I went, why the fuck is Zack Snyder Donald Trump? Like a more fratty, better in shape, better looking, younger, like version of Donald Trump, but is like a film director. What is this? Why are they so similar? But it's the same thing though, right? His fans, we kind of we jokingly, I'm gonna say jokingly because a lot of these people are armed. So like the cult that surrounds these men. it's very fascinating. You know that they're, like, bought in. They
Yeah,
have
yeah.
bought into the brand, they have bought
Very
into the
seriously.
merchandise, they have crafted their, online and, like, on the basis of culture, their discourse, their personality is wrapped around this individual, and it's fascinating because, with Trump in the political sphere of, this declining, morally destroyed empire that was the United States, right? I mean, for them, there was a lot at stake. You know what I mean? Like there was this idea of political representation. There was all of this crap. Some of it makes sense. A lot of it doesn't. But like, who the fuck is next? Zack Snyder? Like, what? What does he give you? You know what I mean? He's offering you nothing of substance in the way that Trump can promise and will probably like in 2016, quite possibly this year, will promise but not deliver. But
Yeah,
you will still be convinced that he delivered, right? But
yeah.
like, what there Zack Snyder, the stakes of Zack Snyder and his work and the results of his outcome, what do they offer? I don't get it. Like it's a movie. You can enjoy a movie, you can even love a movie. You can maybe for a few months make that movie your whole personality if it's a big enough phenomenon like Star Wars in the
Yeah.
70s, but like right? I don't understand.
Yeah, it is
That's the
definitely
thing.
fascinating.
It is. It's so and all I can think of is, he's just a guy who embodies enough within the fragility of the ecosystem, especially for men, where he's something that can be attained, but is currently for them unattainable, outside of reach. And then I think it's just he has a degree of power and access that most people don't, but clearly the system still shits on him. And then I think it's also just the fact of the defiance of it. But
Yeah.
I think it's the same thing. It's was he fueled by what he saw was the masses, crying for this Snyder cut? Right? In this day and age too, you go, is it like a marketing thing? Was the
Mm.
idea even the people's, or was the idea like planted in their heads by, company shill masquerading as an individual? Because that shit happens too,
Yeah.
right? And it's like you can't break it down. I think if you don't mind, I don't. We can keep
No, I
talking
don't.
about
No,
this.
I
But
don't. It's totally fine.
I'm gonna start to introduce this legacy thing.
Okay.
I
Go on.
think the final element that definitely gave Snyder a lot of ammunition to kind of do this, intentionally, unintentionally, but also his fan base, the Snyder Bros, to like become what they are. This Trump
Yeah.
phenomenon is who Joss Whedon is.
Mm.
I think that's the last element, right? Because if you think about it with like Trump,
Yeah.
in this system, we were stuck with Trump or like Hillary Clinton. Before Clinton, it was like maybe Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
Like I personally was a fan of his, not so much anymore. But like, right? But then this thing is happening. Bernie gets locked out by Hillary, who claims like, oh, Sanders supporters are like horrible misogynists. Some of them maybe were. I don't know. I was already abroad when this was starting to happen. But it was like, okay, so we have this person who we understand, we know, but we don't like.
Mm.
And they're coming in and they're trying to silence this other guy who we kind of do like, not necessarily because of what he's saying, but the fact that he's saying it,
Yeah.
right? So I think it's not as strong an argument as the others.
Mm.
But with Snyder too, I think his immortalization, which I think again is baffling. I don't understand why he has been immortalized the way he is, he of all people. But I think it's because Joss Whedon,
Mm.
right? Like Snyder is relieved of duty because his daughter, passes away, takes her own life, all of this, right? He needs time, and as anyone does, to
Yes.
kind of be with the remaining family to kind of figure that all out, be with his wife Deb. And I think the studio hiring the guy who made the Avengers movies, who is like, at that time before things came to light about how he would
Yeah.
interact with people on set or how he would prioritize his writing, especially women. Like he comes on right as these conversations are starting to happen. Right, he comes in, does the reshoots. You can clearly tell what was directed and edited and overseen by him, right? Like the Flash falling into Gal Gadot's tits, like shit like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. The
Snyder is a
The
weird guy.
Aquaman's weird joke
Mhm.
with the Wonder Woman thing with the lasso.
Like, yeah, I mean, it's like Snyder's a weird guy. Was it Baby Doll? What the hell was that movie called? The one that he made?
Yeah. Shit.
Sucker Punch.
Sucker Punch. Yeah. Baby Doll is the
Uh, you know,
protagonist. Yeah.
right, and it's like, he's clearly kind of capable of weirdness, but not Joss Whedon post 2017 weirdness. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's the thing. I think for the Snyder people, similar to like Hillary Clinton trying to deny Trump, or that's what Trump's people are saying, right? Or Biden in 2020 trying to deny the election. That's what they're saying. It's
Yeah.
what they believe still 4 years later.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think it's the same thing. It's
Mm.
this guy had this baby.
Yeah.
It was a mess. It was a Frankenstein's monster to the extreme,
Mm.
really. But it really, you mentioned his style. He has a style. And it's undeniable that the DCEU, for the most part, those core movies leading to that, Jack Kirby, New God stuff,
Yeah.
was his. It was something that he was probably going to fail in executing. And in my opinion, with the Snyder Cut, he still kind of did.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to take that from him. He had a vision, right? I will give him that as well. But it's like, okay, it's denied from him in that
Yeah, it
first round.
was. It was.
A
It
studio
definitely
that just
was.
doesn't care about him.
Yeah.
And I think for the fan base, they were just emboldened even more when it came to like who the guy that replaced him was. And they're saying, this is the guy who did the Marvel stuff.
Yeah.
He was after Favreau was burned out with Iron Man 2, Whedon was the architect before he, for whatever reason, maybe related to this, was let go, and now the fucking Russo brothers are like milk toast
Yeah.
into two white men. Like they are now the fucking face of this thing, which kills my soul. But
Yeah.
it's like, all right, I think for them, they're going, we're finding out that he's kind of like a sexist, or this guy who keeps crying about being a women's rights person or crying about being a feminist, like almost too much so. We're
Yeah.
finding out kind of is a little bit of a sexist. So they're unearthing this hypocrisy. And I think it kind of underscores and highlights that perception of the whole system being hypocritical.
Yeah.
And I don't think they're wrong. They have every right to feel that way.
Yeah.
I just think yet again that Zack Snyder being this kind of Jesus character, this messianic guy that they're gonna rep, it just boggles my mind. It's the same
Yeah.
with Trump. It boggles my mind that it's him. But here we are. And I think that's it. I think it's the legacy. So in a way, Snyder's legacy is cemented, just like Trump's is. It doesn't matter. Nothing can happen. Even if he is, shot, just like what tried to happen a few months ago with Trump.
Yeah.
If he's shot and killed, he is immortalized to
Yeah, he
that
would be.
group of
Yeah.
people, right? You know what I mean? They are emboldened. They will find some thing to blame. They will go get lost in conspiracy theories about how Disney orchestrated it or Warner Brothers
Yeah.
orchestrated it or such, right? You know, and I think it speaks to the legacy because if you take these two weirdos, Joss Whedon and Zack Snyder, they are both weirdos in very different ways. I don't think you're going to find the kind of shit that is coming to light for a lot of these people in entertainment. You're
Yeah.
not going to find that with him. He's a
Nah.
weird guy.
Yeah.
He's a dopey guy. He unmedicated ADHD, and like he's probably an idiot. All right, to be the most generous I can be, I
Mm.
think substantively, intellectually, he's probably an idiot who just has a good sense of aesthetics. That's it. Like a cool way of realizing comic book panels. That's it.
Mm.
I'm not going to take that from him. But you're not he's probably and then just watch, in 6 months he will be or whatever. But, like, he's probably not gonna be found to have done some of this stuff, like,
Nah.
be a
Nah.
horrible man to, like, his female
Yeah.
stars, to be horrible to women, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, as fratty and douchey as the guy comes across, as much of an idiot as he seems to be and possibly likely is, I don't think you're going to find him guilty of that shit, like Jeffrey Epstein shit. You know what I mean?
Nah.
That I
Yeah.
think is the
Definitely not.
last element too
Yeah.
this legacy thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, Zach's baby is taken from him, and it's given to somebody that we now find out is this dog shit person. And
And
then
right around
Zach is
that time
going,
too, like around 2017 with the Me Too
exactly, yeah,
movement
he's a
starting.
exactly. And so I think that's the thing is Zach, I mean, but this now everything kind of falls apart because Trump, it's very well documented that he is not at all like a saint,
Nope.
but right, I think for them, the people that buy into him, the question is, right, and that's why they're fucking the 2024, they're saying, I'd rather vote for the felon. The guy has been found guilty of committing crime, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And
Yep.
his base are still like backing the police, but saying they'd vote for the felon. I mean, but that's my point is I think for them,
I don't think
they're saying,
logic
well,
applies
it's is
to them.
yes, but they're saying his crimes are lesser than the hypothetical crimes that the other side are guilty of committing or
Yeah.
harboring the allegation is. But I think with Snyder, it's a lot more black and white, though. It's like, I think Joss Whedon, who he is, what ended up happening, I think it does have this impact value for Snyder that cements his legacy. And I bring it up because you have these filmmakers like Francis Coppola. I don't know. I was curious if you'd heard about that, with his Megalopolis
Yeah.
and the marketing campaign for that. I
Yeah.
mean, I think it's clear that he probably is going to slow down or finish entirely with this movie.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's one of the most divisive movies we've seen in a long time. But, I mean, it sounds like it's also a fucking disaster to be Francis Coppola, to be around Francis Coppola, to be handling
Yeah.
Francis Coppola, right? I don't
Yeah.
know if you heard about it, but they were saying, oh,
I
there was
read a
an
few
allegation
things.
that when he was filming this movie, he would go up and make unwanted advances on female extras and would do this, and then he would say, "Oh, I know you didn't ask for it, but it made me happy, basically. So
Yeah, I'm an
sue."
Italian old
And then
guy,
and then
that
the
kind of argument.
fucking phone recording came out that confirmed this was happening,
Hmm.
and I'm going, "Oh my god." And then
Yeah.
most recently, a day or two ago, it came to light that a lot of the ad firm that was hired to market this film had been
Yeah,
using
they put in
AI
it.
to
Yeah, they
create
wrote.
pull quotes. Yeah.
Yeah, fake quotes by.
Oh,
Yeah, that was crazy.
and so I think, that's the thing. It's like you either die a hero, or you live long enough to become one, right? I think the legacy is a lot of these people, especially men, they have their lifespan, their career lifespan. And I think Coppola is tragic because Coppola never ran around claiming to be a feminist. I think it's just Coppola's, he's a fucking almost great grandfather now. I think he's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
he's an old ass man.
Yeah, he
He's
is. He is old.
Scorsese, Lucas, Spielberg. They're all kind of winding down, right?
Yeah.
The Fablemans was Spielberg saying it's the twilight of my life. I can tell the story about myself, and I can earn it. Killers of the Flower Moon, Scorsese saying, "Look," in that way, with that voice, "Look, I know I'm not going to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
I didn't make a lot of money with Silence. I didn't
Yeah.
make a lot of, I wasn't able to put The Irishman anywhere, right? But he knows
Yeah.
it's not about making money for him. It never really was. Going
Yeah.
back to his peak, Mean Streets, Taxi Driver, he knew that, but I think he's also saying, I can tell these stories that for whatever reason, he's not Osage, he's not native, but that story resonated with him. And he knew nobody else could tell it but him. He
Yeah.
knew nobody else could have the technical acumen, that skill to
Yeah.
translate that book, which is nothing really like the
Yeah.
movie, and focus on the important things that his movie was telling. Right. And he knew that. He said, I don't care that me, Leo, we're not making money. It's fine. And, that's the sign of a man who's at the end of his rope, who's kind of saying, I'm making movies about whatever I want, and people will find a way to finance it or give my product a home because I'm Martin fucking
Yeah,
Scorsese. You know
exactly.
what I mean?
Because nobody else could have gotten that project off the
Exactly.
ground.
Exactly. And I think what kills me is then you have Francis Coppola, because Lucas, he sold the farm.
Yep.
He's fine.
Yeah, he's fine.
It doesn't matter if he loves or hates what Kathleen Kennedy and Disney are doing with Star Wars. He has what, 4 point something billion dollars or 6 point something
Yeah.
billion dollars. That he is fine. He and his wife are fine. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And he doesn't give a shit. So he's doing his thing. But it's like you have Coppola who's showing that that generation, they're not all making it. They're not clearing that finish line.
Yeah.
Coppola's tripping, his legacy's tarnished. What Whedon, his legacy likely will be for a while. I mean, you can do the Louis C.K. route. You can get caught doing that weird shit.
Just
Stick
double
your head
down
in the
on
sand.
it.
Yeah, and then just, bury yourself in the sand, and then, people will come around and go, "Well, it's weird as shit, but it's not really that bad, I guess." Or you have the Kevin Spacey stuff where, all of his male accusers keep committing suicide or
Yeah.
dying,
Keep
and
disappearing.
so there is nobody who can show up in court, so then the charges have to get either pushed back or dropped entirely. So
Yeah.
technically, in the eyes of the law, he didn't actually do anything
Yeah.
wrong, but,
As if Kevin Spacey's weird ass Christmas videos weren't
yes,
proof enough.
but yeah, like Armenia. I don't know how I found this out, but Armenia flew him out to Yerevan to do an acting workshop. So I mean, that's what he's up to. But that's what I mean. His career didn't die. There will come a point in time, and it will become political always and forever, especially in the US. But there will come a point in time where any person who gets quote unquote canceled or their legacy is called into question will eventually find some opportunity. It's
Yeah.
like the ending of Tumblr. You know what I mean? Like the opportunity will come calling. It might not be what you want. It might not be in North America. It might not even be in West or Northern Europe, but the opportunity will
We'll
come
be there.
calling.
Yeah.
Yes, you will conduct your Monster Hunter orchestra in the Philippines or wherever, Lydia Tarr ended up,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But that's the thing. And I think that's what we're seeing. I think that's kind of the last element we are tackling. So some people, they don't have nerves of steel. Like, one of the greats, Dave Chappelle, was a comedic genius. And I
Yeah.
think even in his current specials, there is some gold. But, it's like J.K. Rowling. You either die here or you live long enough to see yourself get sued
Yeah.
by a intersex boxer from Algeria over slanderous tweets that you and a handful of other people did during the Paris Olympics, right?
Yeah.
It's like enough time will pass, things will explode. But if you see it through, eventually you will find a harbor.
Mm.
And so I think about like on TikTok, there was this woman, white woman, who kept saying the N word.
All
She
right.
lost her job because, people found out who she
Okay.
was. Her face was there. She was using her name. She lost her job. They found out that despite her saying the N-word, she had a mixed race baby. That's spoilers for the story. But like she said, her whole thing was, oh, okay, like far right podcasts are now asking me to come on because I got canceled. This was my plan all along, she says.
Mm.
Right? But then she couldn't make it work. She couldn't make a career off of
Yeah.
that, off of, hustling and,
Yeah.
selling products and going, woke justice is evil or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But like people like Chappelle or people like Rowling, they have these things that they believe or things that they say. And the knee jerk reaction when you get called out on it is to find safety in the group of people that will have you,
Yeah.
which
Who was
tends to
the
be that
actress who got
group.
fired of The Mandalorian? Same thing with her.
Oh, yeah, Gina Carano, who
Yeah, Gina
sued
Carano.
Disney.
Yeah.
And then she had to come with her tail between her legs because they finally offered her a job and it was coming to light, like, Pedro Pascal was just saying, like, hey, I'm not trying to tell you to not be transphobic. I'm just saying, like, when you navigate public spaces, this is how you go about saying it. Just
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
this and
Yeah.
everyone will get off your ass.
Yeah.
But right, I mean, you look at like Hogwarts Legacy, that video game,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It still made a ton of bank.
It
People
did.
were saying, well, it's J.K. Rowling's pockets were lining, and I don't agree with her, right? It's the same thing. Zack Snyder, Donald Trump, Harry fucking Potter,
Yeah.
right? When you have these things that people identify so heavily with, and they make it their personality, Batman,
Yeah.
Superman, DC, Zack Snyder, it's all one monster. Harry Potter, my house is Ravenclaw. No, my house is
Yeah.
Hufflepuff. Whatever. The movies, the books, the merchandise. You wrap so much of your money, your time, your identity into it that when the artist, the author, gets called out for some shit, you take it personally.
Yeah.
It becomes an indication on you. You are somehow responsible for this. You are somehow guilty by association.
Yeah.
And
Same
so
with
I think you
sports
have,
too. You know.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You have this back and forth, and I think that's what dominates the conversation, and it's just what we're seeing now. I
Yeah.
think it's more so the Trump effect of like Trump with Zack Snyder. It's the Trump's going, I'm the uncancelable man, and in a way he is, because no matter how damning the evidence is to his fans, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So he is in fact uncancelable. Zack Snyder is the fresh tomato man. He can't make a film that a fucking tomato will be fresh for, but it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. His fans are saying all the more reason, right?
Yeah.
It's like remember when John Travolta made that John Gotti movie?
Yeah. That was a
Yes.
whole thing.
Okay. Do you remember when the movie
Yeah, the
started
movie
tanking
pass
because it
in
was
I think funded it, right? The amazing
I
movie
know,
pass story.
but like you remember when everyone and their moms knew the movie was gonna suck, and
Yeah.
the only reason it got any audience was people hate watching it, which again is the shape of things to come now with
Yeah.
like the acolyte and with everything, hate watching.
Yeah.
But then also it was like everyone knew it was gonna suck, and they wanted to see it as a joke, or they wanted to see it because it's John Travolta, and like when the movie started doing really badly, the social media team for that movie said, "Oh, the critics put the hit out on our film. That's
Yeah,
not a
yeah.
true reflection of, true Gotti heads. Go see the movie and give us a, like a good rating." I think that's what's happening now too. It's like if you're a Snyder bro in the year of our Lord 2020 fucking 4, and his movies keep sucking because they suck, you're gonna say, "Oh, it's a conspiracy," or it's Marvel people, or it's Disney, or it's Warner Brothers, right? You can
Or
keep
woke people or
hiding
whatever.
behind, yeah, exactly. You can keep creating this like story that justifies the code, I guess, as the internet
Yeah.
says. And I think that's what we're seeing. And like Snyder gets a pass on it because he's not Whedon. He's not, this canceled celebrity. And I think, it's just a shame. The
Yeah.
bar is such and it's so inconsistent and
Yeah.
it's very hypocritical. The whole system of cancellation as a partisan tool for, conservative people, liberal people, what have you. It's very hypocritical, but
Yeah.
you know, at the end of the day, in this case, between Donald Trump and Zack Snyder, I think Zack Snyder probably deserves more of a fair shake than the other. But like,
Definitely.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like it's this legacy question. I think it's sad we've reached this point where it doesn't matter if you're Francis Coppola, Joss Whedon, Zack Snyder, whatever, what industry, Chappelle, Rolling, it doesn't matter. I think people look at your legacy before it's really ready to be viewed as a legacy, and
Yeah.
they're thinking about like into the future, and they're going, okay, I don't want you to have that future, so I'm gonna go to the past. I'm gonna find some shit you did, and it's like, yeah, so Kevin Hart can't host the fucking Emmys or the Golden Globes because of that, and it's like, why? Like, okay, I mean, but why? And, I think
Disney tried, not tried, actually fired James Gunn. Remember that?
yeah, yeah, from Guardians because of his, but then they
Yeah.
hired him back on for Guardians 3.
Yeah.
They gave him his send off, and then, Warner said, "Hey, you're basically, to use sports terms, you're a free agent. You wanna sign with us?" And then,
Yeah.
I mean, like, here he is.
Yeah.
But, right, it's that same thing. Snyder's fanboys, they're saying, "We refuse to accept James Gunn. We refuse to accept anything he puts out. We're gonna hyper scrutinize. We will become the hate watch,
Yeah.
the hate watchers. We were the victims of the hate watch. We are now going to become the hate watchers."
Yeah.
And I think that's what's gonna happen. So they're gonna see the fucking DC universe stuff. They're gonna see James Gunn's movies. They're gonna probably refuse to admit that it's good if it's good, and they
Yeah.
can hide behind, well, critics are buyable or whatever, bullshit like that, as
Yeah.
why, Rotten Tomatoes or Metacritic or whatever keeps giving it a decent to high score, right? I mean, it's the John Gotti thing. The critics put out the hit. We alienate and we vilify critics, and then that is how we cope with this movie,
Yeah.
and then we appeal to the masses. The last thing I have to say about Snyder, and then we can talk about whatever, is like what's so fascinating about him is if we bring the studio back into the conversation, it's the power of the people,
Yeah.
It's very fascinating because it's like who really had power in this release the Snyder Cut thing? Was it because the mob kept churning on Warner Brothers and kept screaming, or was it because what I think? The studio's going, well, we have a streaming service and we don't have a lot of content for it yet. So
Yep.
we might as well kill multiple birds with one stone, right?
Yep.
So I think for the Snyder people, like Trump, they think, oh, because we got our way, it's because the system is actually listening to us, or we have more power in the conversation than we did ever before in the past. And it's like, no, I think with Snyder, this whole thing with the Snyder Cut, more so than with the politics thing, it's pretty clear to me that no, they just wanted to shut you up and they wanted to weaponize your frustration to get you to watch this thing on their streaming service so that
Yeah.
they can turn a profit. Because at the end of the day, right, what we've been saying, it's a profit-based industry. If you once you look at everything that comes out of that Hollywood as it's a pursuit of maximizing profit, everything makes more sense, which is the
Yeah.
great shame.
Yeah.
Because even to dumbasses like Zack Snyder, Zachary Snyder, who are by all rights wonderful people, wonderful people to work with, wonderful people to call your friend, right? For him, it doesn't seem like it was about money. Even
Mm.
to him, it seemed like he just had a vision that he alone, no one else could realize.
Mm.
So if there's anything else I can say about him, it's I can't take that. But his movies are terrible.
Mm. Yeah. I think another thing that suffered during the whole thing is the cast, because when it comes to
Oh yeah,
DCU, the whole disorganized thing, like from the top to bottom, bottom to top, the whole thing was a chaos, right? Like the top
absolutely.
leadership, the DC leadership, everything. But I think what suffered was, cohesion, storytelling, characters, whatever, but also casting, because I think DCU really got their casting right, like most of it, not all of them. I don't think Ezra Miller should have been Wally West, even before all his bullshit, all his criminal activities. But other than that, I think pretty much everyone was on spot. Like if I'm not forgetting someone. I think Ben Affleck's casting was interesting. I think he was good enough, and if he had a chance to make it doesn't. He didn't really have to direct his own movie, but if he just did have like a chance to like really personify that character, that make that character his own, if he had that chance, I think he's a good enough actor to make it happen. He doesn't need to win an Oscar for it. Same with Henry Cavill, same with Gal Gadot, whoever else, even Jason Momoa. He was definitely a thing he was doing. He was definitely doing a thing, specific thing. I don't know what it was, but it was definitely his thing. So, he was going in for it. So, it was working, whatever it was. So, I think the casting were really good, most of it. I loved Jeremy Irons as Alfred. I wish we did see more of him. But with all that, I think one of the things that suffered is the cast. I think a lot of fans, when it comes to the Trumpism thing, the weird obsession with Zack Snyder and everything. There are other fans, mostly Mongolians, Mongolian fans who are mostly obsessed with the Snyder Cut and everything, but completely, totally unaware of how Zack Snyder is as a person, at least publicly, or with his social media, with his interviews or whatever, and with the Joss Whedon thing, and a lot of Mongolian movie fans are generally unaware of a lot of stuff that's going on, even if they're really, really, really public. Mongolians, I'm not saying everyone, but a lot of fans still love Kevin Spacey to death. With the whole Johnny Depp Amber Heard thing, everybody went crazy.
Yeah.
A lot of people are not aware and really don't want to be aware. The problem is that Mongolian media, right? Whether it's traditional media or people like us on the internet, nobody really talks about these very publicly available information things in Mongolian, right? I know there are people who can understand and read in English, but they're not interested, and the rest of them can't. Even if they are interested, they just don't understand a lot of it. So even if they talk about it, even if a few people choose to talk about these kind of pop culture, entertainment, culture related off-screen kind of problematic things, it doesn't feel like they're educated enough on the subject. You know what I mean? They're not reading enough about it. They're not digging in enough about it. Because of all of that, I think Mongolian fans, when it comes to it, they have a really different kind of a view on the whole Snyder kind of thing. It's weird, really weird.
Well, but I think nobody is expected to get this deep into the iceberg. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of
Like
course, of course.
this is just something that I've been thinking. It's not even, I wouldn't encourage people to dig further. It's not something that needs to be investigated, right? But that's the thing too. It's so far removed from the average person
Yeah.
that I'm going, okay, yeah, it's already pretty bad on my part that I'm thinking at all about this. But at the same time, the people that are in this group, I'm going, but you're also implicated in this too. You're kind of involved in this. You are making your whole personality, your very identity in online or in public spaces this.
Yeah.
And it's that takes a lot of time and effort too, doesn't it? It's
Yeah.
it's just a movie, dog. I don't want to spend more time thinking about Zach. I want my thoughts of him to be just that seems like a nice guy, he seems like a cool guy to work with or a
Yeah.
cool guy to work for. But, yeah, it's just the discourse, and I think, right, when it's a profit-based industry too, at some level, the thought process is, it's better for us in terms of our bottom line, in terms of what we stand to make,
Yeah.
if we let this conversation happen, right? And I think that's just the shame of it too. I think Zach is just, he's a puppet,
Yeah.
really, of the studio, whether it's Netflix or Warner. I think all these companies within the industry are constantly just using him. Netflix, as far as they're concerned, they're probably trying to capitalize on his fan base. And as far as they're concerned, it's working because their fan base is his cult is so bought in. They'll tune in, they'll watch it twice, they'll go to a friend's house, log into his Netflix account and
Yeah.
watch from there too. You know what I mean? It's like I think I think trying to dissect why is an exercise in futility. I just wanted to put on the record here
Mm.
so that, somebody can go, "Oh, I see where he was going, and yes, he's right," or "I see where he was going, no, he was wrong." And that's fine. I think, the Mongolians, it's fascinating. I mean, you're in a better position to kind of explore why the phenomenon took off over there than I am.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I think coming from this Western mindset, which is itself not, the end all be all, that's not the only solution, the only explanation, right? But that's the explanation that makes the most sense to me. I think that's the truth. I think there are very few directors that, like, deserve to have their cults. I think it's weird, right? That people are banding around Zach, but, like, I'm not gonna deny him the cult. I think it's just sad that, dog shit movies are what they're making their personality all around. But,
Yeah.
it's like Christopher Nolan too, right? Like,
Yup.
to talk about a different end of the spectrum, he has a cult. I,
Yeah, it
can
does. It
proudly say I
definitely
belong to
does.
that cult, right? And it's like, yeah, I unironically think Tenet is like one of his best movies. It's the best movie of 2020. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I can't explain it, not really. I think, there's if you really dissect why, it ultimately becomes very like trolling and meme-ish too, kind of like how Trump's people operate or Snyder's people. Like I did it for the lulz and then I genuinely bought into what I was doing as a joke, right?
Mm.
I mean, it could be that. And I think it's weird. We're in this landscape where the legacy ultimately is, and I don't want this conversation to be had, but I think the legacy of a filmmaker is did the guy, or to an extent, did the girl, did they get canceled for something?
Yeah.
And it's like, so far Nolan seems pretty uncancelable, so his legacy seems right now to be set, right? Like Snyder, by all accounts, is what I just said earlier. He's just like a dumb guy, but like he seems to be a sweetheart, like to be around and to be with. And so he's probably not going to be canceled. So his legacy is assured. So his cult's justified. Nolan's cult's justified. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
even James Cameron, right? Who has treated his previous wives pretty shit, like
Mm.
Linda Hamilton and Catherine
Catherine,
Bigelow. But
yeah.
like they all seem to have made amends. They're all like they extend the professional courtesy. Hamilton knows she's probably not really going to be called to do more movies that Cameron has his fingers in. You know what I mean? Like, okay, but it's like for all those kind of questionable skeletons in Cameron's closet, it's like that guy doesn't really seem to be cancelable either. He cares
Yeah.
about deep sea exploration. He cares about ecology, right? Like the thing that boggles my brain is in this industry, which does shape culture all over the world for reasons I don't necessarily love, especially coming from the States. But it's like for this industry, it's kind of fascinating that the audience is judging if they should form a cult around a person based on things like that, rather
Mm.
than the art itself. It's more like, "Oh, your victimhood, your grievances." And ultimately, absolutely, I am just as guilty of belonging to that whole phenomenon as anyone else. My conspiracy theory is it's the studios.
Mm.
They weaponized this whole thing. I'm convinced probably Disney was the one to go, "Oh, we should do this," and then Warner followed, and everybody else followed, where it's like, yeah, hate watching is still watching, right? It doesn't matter
It's
if
still
you're an
numbers.
inbred, exactly. It doesn't matter if you're an inbred, like incest baby in Alabama. If you vote for Trump, that's a vote that counts the same as, like a Wall Street banker who earns, $5 million, per
Yep.
month and, wants to not pay more in taxes. It's the same thing. So it's like it doesn't matter. It's like, but the thing is, it's an entertainment industry. I don't understand why our champions of industry have to be like
Entertainers,
more
actors.
exactly, like moral tycoons who are like, have a spotless record. Because I'm going, eventually, if we keep killing this shit, if we keep doing all of that, and I was thinking about it, like Adult Swim has that show Smiling Friends that's taken over the internet, and it's like people are, for whatever reason on Twitter, we're split about that. And I'm like, well, do you like the show? Yes. but why are you saying you don't like this? You can't keep watching. Oh, because the creators 20 years ago when they were teenagers were on Newgrounds saying the N word or doing this or
Mm,
doing that. I'm like, but Newgrounds was like the edgy place
mm,
where teenagers would do that for shock humor. Like, are you're not gonna assume that they grew up or like, figured it. It's
yeah.
like, no, it can't. They have
Grew
to
as a
say it. It's like
person.
exactly. And it's like, but the moment that you step out into the town square or you go on Twitter and you say, I've heard what you're saying. You are saying this. You want to know what I think about this. This is what I have to say. Yes, I apologize, right? It's done. In the mind of the masses, they have power over you, and then they
Yeah.
can say, "Well, that's not good enough. You need to apologize for this," or
Y
Yeah, that's not good enough. You need to cast this person in your next show." Right? It's like
yeah.
shit like that. It just never ends.
Yeah,
And so,
mm.
right, it becomes really complicated, and so we're stuck here going, okay, so then we're going to eventually have nothing. We're going to have nothing that we can watch because nobody can be authorized to
Yeah, nobody's
produce it.
spotless perfect. Yeah.
Exactly. It's very fascinating.
Yeah, I think the whole like celebrity culture, like on a bigger scale, but on a
It's
like a large following on a smaller
weird.
scale, thing
Weird as
is
hell.
weird because like they're not anyone who has like a quote unquote larger following shouldn't be the moral or ethical like whatever this line for everybody else to follow, right? It shouldn't be the example. Nobody is spotless unless they're really projecting themselves like that, presenting themselves like that. I think when it comes to this topic, I recently we were hanging out with some friends, and one of my friends is a really popular person in Mongolia, right? Like she has like
Yeah.
huge following, and then we were talking about this like following and people, getting the wrong idea about who you are or why they follow in the first place or whatever, what they expect of you, whatever, that kind of thing. The pressure of it or lack of it. And then she was like, I'm really hating this. Like, I'm really having this complicated relationship with the whole following thing because they think I'm this like angelic, great person. Like, whenever I'm writing something that I'm just feeling like, about weather or whatever, like nothing that serious, or even if it's something serious, it's just, about who I am or what I feel like. And then people just like blindly follow her. Like, they're almost to the point of not to the point of but worshiping or like blindly following, or they're like
Mhm.
completely praising her, like they're going crazy, and she's like, I'm scared of that. Like, I don't want this. Like, I'm not this person that they think I am, and it's scary, and it shouldn't be like that. And I think this is a much smaller scale than what we were talking about, but
Mhm, mhm.
but like in the context, it's dangerous. Like, I think it's the same in in a way.
I think absolutely. For me too, I feel like it's a power thing,
Mm.
you know? And, like, power and jealousy and envy. It's like, yeah, we look at celebrities and a part of us want that, right? And I think it also, like, circles back to this Trump Snyder thing. It's like some celebrities are just so out there. They're so far removed from us, how they live, how they you know what I mean? There is so it's like Gwyneth Paltrow or, like, Jennifer Lopez. The things right? It's like what they believe. They genuinely think differently than us. It's not better for most of them, it's clearly worse, but it's like, why do you have the fortune? Why did you get the looks? And then that leads to like envy, which leads to jealousy. And then that's what kind of motivates this. I have to find something you did
Yeah.
that brings you down to earth. So then I go, oh, okay, it could be me. I could be the next you, right? Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe. I think with like Snyder too, it's because like, he's like a dude. He's just a fratty guy, you know what I mean? Like, or he comes across as a fratty guy, you know what I mean? Like, that's attainable enough,
Yeah.
you know? If I invest in the, more gym time, I could probably look like him in a few years, you know what I mean? It's like that thing. It's like, oh, he's not too different from me. How he thinks, the nature, like, yeah, his work is kind of star-studded or should be star-studded, and right, but like, you know, I could do that too, you know what I mean? I think that's why he comes across as like a normal guy.
Yeah.
And Nolan, to talk about the cult thing, is kind of a fascinating, maybe fascinating challenge to that theory because I think his whole thing is maybe how it should be. He lets the work speak for itself. So obviously, people can rag on him, people can hate him, but because he's so divorced from social media and from marketing, right? He only does press junkets for the films. That's it. He never really talks about, his other works, or he's evasive about talking about meaning in his work. I think that's probably why his cult also formed, but that also starts to kind of contradict this idea, right? Nolan is so private. I don't know if he has really demonstrated that he's relatable or that
Mm.
he's, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and if his cult is like that, or if it's because so little is known about him. He just
Yeah.
comes out, makes a film that's largely very good, and then just vanishes for 3 years. And then
Yeah,
people
he
go,
does.
oh, fuck. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
if that's why they are forming the cult around. In
Yeah.
that case, though, right,
Mm.
between personality and the craft, that if we're gonna just accept that this behavior is our new normal, that we have to endorse things wholesale, buy in, make it our personality, something we're willing to die over, then I would rather, if we're gonna even entertain that in entertainment spheres, then we should let the product speak for itself,
Mm.
not the who the person is, right? It's like Roman Polanski, the guy, he is guilty as far as
Yeah.
we're concerned. He admitted it under duress to the police 50 years ago, but he's guilty, right?
Yep.
There's a reason he's fucked off to France and he can't come back, right?
Yeah.
It's like, can you I can it's hard, but I can watch a Roman Polanski film and then, grade it on its own merits instead
Mm.
of going, "No, the film sucks because of what he did, who he is." I understand, though, at the same time, why people would say, "No, I could never watch a film by this guy because 'cause I'd always know this is what he did." I understand that too, but it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, but we should criticize things on the basis of itself. That's kind of why, like, I'm glad we didn't really tear into Rebel Moon
Mm.
because we hadn't seen it,
Yeah.
right? We're talking about the social phenomenon
Yeah.
that came before the movie
Yeah.
and extended while the movie came out and seems to be continuing now after. And it's like, yeah, I think that's the thing too.
I think the
And
more extreme version of, of that whole thing is going on with Kanye West. It's
well, yeah, that
yeah.
too. But I think Kanye, I mean, well, again, I can't really speak to it because I stopped listening to him because
Yeah.
it got the noise from him
Yeah.
just started overwhelming
Yeah,
my
it did.
ability to listen to the music, and I think that's by design. I think everything that guy does is intentional. There is some, even the things that are not well thought out, there is intent behind it at the moment. The guy is super impulsive. He's clearly bipolar, diagnosed but unmedicated, untreated.
Yeah.
But, like, we're not him, we're not his circle. He's clearly surrounded himself by people who are yes men, and
Yep.
his wife was a yes woman, I think. And it's like, there he has enough wealth that he can, get away with it, but yeah, I think it's the same thing.
Yeah.
His 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 I think for him, it's maybe West is a fascinating. Oh, it's really good that you brought him up because I think he's somewhere in the middle between Snyder and Nolan. I think, like, the last album I listened to was Donda. Was there 2 of them? Was there 1, 2?
I have no idea, but there was a
Right.
mention of the
The
second one, but
right, I listened to the 1st and the 2nd, I thought they sucked. So, I mean, it's like that was it.
mm,
Even before all of this shit,
mm,
his highly public meltdown, post-divorce meltdown, all of that. Even before all of that, I was kind of phasing him out, but I can I mean, if I go back in and listen, I don't think I'd like it,
mm,
but maybe I will. I'm not judging it because of who he is. Unfortunately, as an artist, he happens to just inject a lot of what's going on in his
yeah,
life into his lyrics, so it's
yeah,
clear what he's referring to.
yeah. It's
But,
yeah,
I think, for him, it's not like he disappears, so he doesn't do the Nolan thing.
yep,
But we can let the man's product speak for itself, and I do think there was a decline, and I don't think I'm alone in this. I
yeah.
think a
There
lot of people are
definitely
going
is.
right?
Yeah,
And I think those that, still hold on to him and defend the product, which they're entitled to do, I think it then brings into the Zack Snyder thing.
yeah.
I
The
think at
same
this
thing.
point,
Yeah,
it's the J.K. Rowling. They are so bought into him because they've invested so much time into him. And it's like, yeah, absolutely. They
yeah,
are finding something relatable in, the product. Obviously, none of us were married to Kim Kardashian, had kids with her, and are going through this highly public, divorce and post-divorce life, excuse me, without her. But I think that feeling of anger, that resentment, maybe even those kind of more base urges that we shouldn't act on, like, "Oh, it's her fault," men are men, women are women thing, which is like I feel that's what he's doing with his current wife, which is fucked up. But
yeah.
I mean, I think there's that too for like his male audience or some of the more maybe conservative female audience. There's this relationship. They're like, oh, it's relatable. I have blown up in my, lover, my spouse or
Mm.
partner before. I've had a bad breakup or whatever. But yeah, it's hard. I'm not gonna comment on West's products because I don't listen to them anymore. But like,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, who knows? If I go in and listen, I might feel compelled, right? As an individual audience member, right? We reserve the right
Yeah.
to impart whatever we want on the product, as well as take whatever we want from the
Yeah,
product too.
yeah, when we're talking about like separating art from the artist and that this and that, like,
Yes.
and we do understand when someone says I can't watch Dave Chappelle comedies anymore or whatever, Roman Polanski or whatever. I get that, I understand that, and I feel a lot of that. And I brought up Kanye because I have been such like his biggest fan around like any
Mhm.
circle anywhere I've been. I have
Mhm.
been his biggest
Mhm.
fan for almost
Mhm.
not 2 decades, but I don't know, decade and a half maybe. Because I
Mhm.
remember listening to Through the Wire when it came out. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
it was magic for me, and I think just around Jesus and before the life of Pablo, I just kind of tuned out. It was like too much to
Okay.
me, and I was like, I still this day I still haven't listened to the full version of the life of Pablo, right? But then a bit after that, I just kind of came around and tried to, like, see what was going on, and then what I really liked was his Wyoming sessions, right? Like 5 albums, week to week to week. Remember that? With Kid
Mhm.
Cudi,
Mhm.
with Pusha T himself,
Mhm.
with Tiana Taylor,
Mhm.
which he kind of fucked up the Tiana Taylor one, but those projects were really, really, really good. Like they really reminded me of why I loved Kanye in the first place musically, right? Like yeah, with the same thing. Uh, yeah, and then the same thing exists there too. Like you said, like he puts a lot of his personal and other shit into his music, but it worked. With the Wyoming sessions, it worked. Prior to the Life of Pablo, it worked for me. I'm not sure about Life of
Mhm.
Pablo, but then since then it just got too much. With the whole slavery is a choice thing and the DMZ whatever.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's just one
Mhm.
example, but like one shit on top of another, and I just quit. But quitting is fine. I have more time for other things. But what hurts me, right? Like as a fan, for someone who've listened to this artist's music for over a decade, what really hurts me is I really can't fully enjoy his like first like 10 years of catalog anymore. Not really. Like
Really?
sometimes I do, but most of the times it's just so frustrating. Like I can't really listen to them without the current baggage. Like
Mm.
I tried to shake it off sometimes because I really, really, really love a lot of his work, a
Mm.
lot of it.
Mm. I know. I know.
But still, it just comes up like I don't know. It's frustrating. It really is frustrating to me, especially when it comes to music. I don't know why it feels different to me when it comes to
I know what
music.
you mean. It's hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think with film directors and actors, I think it's a maybe a one-off thing when it comes to a movie, especially when it comes to writers and directors. They're not really on the screen or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it's easier,
Mhm.
quote unquote, easier to just kind of ignore what it is and take the art
Mhm.
as
Mhm.
for itself. But when it comes to music, it's that person performing, right? Like that person,
Mm.
that personality, whatever they're attached with, it's part of it. So I think that's why.
So that's a really good point though about the music. I was listening to it and I'm going, yeah, I agree. Like Kanye West too. I find myself just ignoring all of it.
Yeah.
And but maybe that it's and I don't find that with film. There
Hmm.
isn't like a, like even weirdos like Woody Allen, I can go back to his
Hmm.
classics and I can, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's a good interesting point. I think with uh with Kanye though, with all of this music or whether it's not music, I think it speaks to one other thing too, and it's like learning to I think you touched on it, learn to walk away. It's like for Kanye as an artist and a producer, it's like learn when to stop talking,
Yeah. He should
right?
have.
It's like yeah. And then I think too, it's like what you were describing when you kind of just fizzled out your relationship with him as a listener.
Yeah.
It's like you learn to just take a break too.
Yeah.
and it's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard, and I think it's like when we bring in this Harry Potter thing, and I'll kind of touch on some other phenomenon too. It's like when you make something your whole personality, it's hard
Yeah.
to kind of come back down to earth and start over,
Yeah.
especially when years, decades,
Yeah.
thousands upon thousands of dollars over time has been spent cultivating that individualized experience. It's hard to go, I need to stop. And I think from the consumer side, that's why this JK Rowling thing is what it is. I mean, forget like how people actually feel about the root of, this trans issue. If you're transphobic, I can't necessarily change that. I don't agree or whatever, but like, you know what I mean? Like, if we divorce that, a huge part of what complicates the JK Rowling thing and gives her so much ammunition and time and attention is because she's the fucking creator of Harry Potter.
Yeah.
So many people who have cultivated that personality are incapable of divorcing themselves from it or feeling like their association with her creation doesn't impact. I'm dead convinced that that's what's
Yeah.
happening with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, they make these personal things. But we're seeing it too. And I think I messaged you before we figured this out about like hate watch phenomena,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I think that's it as well. I mean, to bring Star Wars in, because Star Wars seems to be the biggest creator mill of hate watch content.
Yep.
There are so many people on YouTube and Twitter who have literally made this their career
Yep.
now
Made their
since
identity,
the
made
since
their
the sale.
brand
Yeah.
channel around it.
You could if and I think for them, most people on Twitter, and this is the truth really for both sides of the American politicals. A lot of people come at people on the right and say that, oh, they don't really believe what they're saying. They do it for the money of people who do genuinely believe it. I think there's some credit and validity to that, but I think the same can apply to the other side too.
Mm.
And I think absolutely for people in the Star Wars sphere, the most vocal in this day and age, as it tends to be, happen to be a bit more right leaning, where the things they take issue with are of like diversity issue and things like that. I don't know if I agree with any. Maybe I agree with some of the points if it's well reasoned, but most of this it's all just like off the dome,
Yeah.
like our conversations, but like of much more social consequence because they're talking about is actually like
Yeah.
questionable at best, full blown, impinging on human rights at worst. So,
Yeah.
but I think it's like, yeah, they're there and they're going, well, why the fuck won't I talk about Star
Mm.
Wars or Star Trek or whatever? Because it's a cultural phenomenon that has a built-in audience that is not limited to the US. It is a global thing and so all I need to do if I wanna make some quick dough is turn on my webcam, have decent enough speaker setup or, recording setup, and just go off about how The Acolyte sucks because woke, and then
Yeah.
bam, I'm
Yeah.
set, I am done. I don't have to do any of the
Yeah.
work. All I can do is go into a show, right? I don't even have to hate the show. I could actually like it,
Yeah.
but I
It's just about
know
what you
I'm
put
going
out
to.
there.
Exactly. I know I'm gonna rack in millions of views. I'm gonna get all sorts of engagement, good and bad. I don't care. As long as the engagement happens, I
Yeah.
earn my paycheck, right? So I think that's the other thing too, is we are seeing this phenomenon now take place both from the actual content creator side, not like, YouTubers, but like studios. They're pivoting away from turning out good shows like The Bear and like good movies, like I don't even know Tenet, and now they're just it's like the lingo that they're using in the industry is content. It's like
Yeah.
instead of a minute 30 TikTok, it's an hour and a half movie, with a budget that's, a million times that of what it costs to make a TikTok video, right? It's the same thing. And I think what we're seeing it on that level from the top. But then from the bottom too, as masses, as the audience, we're also seeing this like push towards we got to keep churning out content. What are our
Yeah.
thoughts? Have we really taken time to think about it?
Yeah.
Speaking of rap, one thing I mean, I love the guy, hate the guy. There's a very famous interview that Jay Z gave
Mm.
15 years ago, where he was saying, I can't stand how Pitchfork and Rolling Stone can churn out a review of my album within 24 hours.
Mm.
And I'm like, I know you could listen to my album within 24 hours, but did you really think about my album? Did you listen to it again? Did you find the tracks that you love? how do you know, like, that quickly
Yeah.
how you feel about the album I
Yeah.
spent, so many months, so many years putting together? And he's like, I just think that's bullshit. I don't think that's how it should be. And
Yeah.
I get where he's coming from.
Yeah.
But we are now full beyond that point where anything, music, movies, sports, we sit there and we just like through Twitter, through Instagram, through TikTok, we just have no means of kind of digesting what we're
Yeah.
thinking about.
Processing
You
things.
know,
It's
we
just
are
react, react,
yeah,
react, react.
exactly.
Yeah.
And now there is a fiscal, like a monetary ecosystem that
Yeah.
if you tap into it the right way and you figure it out the right way, you say certain things the right way, you will make so much money potentially off of just spewing out your reactions.
Yeah.
But we've now seen it undeniably. Things
Yeah.
with like Star Wars, with The Acolyte, with Mandalorian season, whatever, with all of these Star Wars shows, Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? Like we see it now that there is just as much money to be made hating something, whether you genuinely hate it or not, as there is the money to be made loving something. Because I think Disney too also didn't help, and we're now pivoting completely into
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
topic. I think
They definitely didn't
Disney
with their
they I
messaging.
think actively contributed to this.
Yep.
And I think in the beginning their whole thing was nothing bad.
They really
No
wanted to pat
criticism
themselves on the back.
Yes, no criticism whatsoever. So we're gonna do what we've always done. And instead of, Instagram models or whatever, we'll get TikTokers too. And we'll bring these people in, we'll show them X percentage of our Galaxy's Edge or Star Cruiser, and we'll tell them only post good things,
Yeah.
right? And you get a goodie bag, right? That was their thinking. And now they're going, well, we still do that, but we have this audience that will shit on anything we do, even if it's good, because they saw what we were doing here with our influencers. And they're saying, well, why don't we just encourage both? We'll keep hiring these influencers to churn out their positive things. So we'll get the undecideds and the people who love us. They'll come, they'll love it no matter what. And the people who hate our shit, some of them maybe torrent and pirate our stuff, don't watch it legally, but not all of their millions of fans
Yeah.
do. So, people are still paying for Disney Plus per month.
Yeah.
So we're still getting money from them. So yeah, that's how it works. So I think we have it. Ultimately, my point is that the studio is just the root of all of the problems.
Yeah.
They are creating positive, like conventional positive, to make money off of it. And they're also willingly like allowing very clear negatives to keep going too, because there is a way they can make money off of
Yeah.
it, right? And it's like, yeah, is getting a check from Disney, so he or she is fine. This hate watcher is getting a check from YouTube or Twitter because they, have millions of followers and
Yeah.
subscribers, right? So I mean, that's the thing. So as far as everyone's concerned in capitalism, this is now a super communist, podcast. No, but like, right? I mean, within capitalism, as far as everyone's concerned, they're happy because they're making money somehow.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
just weird that it became such a cult sphere. I think that's the thing I'm not ultimately happy about, but I don't think we can go back now.
I hate it when people throw out more like their moral standings, and maybe not talk about like super big ideas about ethics or whatever, but just throw out their baselines just for profit, for attention, for following, for whatever. And I
Right.
feel that pressure too on a very small scale, but I do have that pressure where you really need to keep churning out stuff to, I don't know,
Sure.
to please the algorithm, or to increase your following, to subscribers or whatever. And that pressure is there. It's just I can't take it seriously, and maybe that's why things are not growing in the channel and public kind of public way as I would like to. But I've seen too many channels that I really really loved. Talked about movies and shows in a really really genuine kind of way, and then those channels really grew because they started talking about things in a very very
Started
hateful
shitting
way.
on it. Yeah.
Exactly. Like there was this one channel, right? Like, do you know this the show The Expanse on
Yeah.
yeah. So that show aired 3 seasons on Sci-Fi, right? And then Sci-Fi canceled it. I think it was 3 seasons or 4, I don't know. And then Sci-Fi canceled it, and the fans really loved it, and I was one of those fans, right? and fans started Kickstarters. They started Kickstarters for money to fly a plane over Netflix and Amazon
Yes, you told me
headquarters and
because
everything.
Amazon
Yeah,
bought them, right? I remember.
they did that, and I even donated money to that because I loved the show. I really wanted to wanted the show to continue, and then that show really didn't have that big a following on social media in the sense that there weren't really big YouTubers talking about it or whatever, right? But there was this one YouTuber who had, I think, around 10,000 subscribers. Really, really loved the show. He had reviewed every episode from when the first episode came out, right? Like this super nerdy guy. Like his room was awesome with collections and everything. He's this early 40s or late 30s guy, like, like awesome. He looked like this nerdy guy who loves movies and shows and Legos and comics and whatever, right? In his whatever spare room. Like, and I loved his. I started watching his channel too, and he started talking about how the expense needed to be reviewed, and like wish as fans we wish it would be picked up by Netflix or whatever, right? And then the Amazon thing worked, and it was like big. He kept making videos on it, and then the show continued on Amazon on 2-3 seasons. He talked about every episode. He was awesome. He had knowledge about the books and everything, and I loved it. And he talked about other pop culture things. He was fine. But then just right after the expense ended, I think he was like, "Oh shit, my main income has dried up." Right, like the show has ended. I don't know what else to talk about because he basically became the channel for the show because nobody else was doing like videos like him, and like his videos were racking up the most views when it comes to the expense. And then after the show ended, he just kind of pivoted to hating Star Wars, to hating Disney, this woke, that, this, you know what I mean, like all those things. And then for some time I didn't his show videos didn't even show up because I started not watching them, but I was still subscribed, I guess. But then a month or so ago, his video comes up. It pops up on the home page on my YouTube, and then it was this like crazy, like super crazy, like over the top thumbnail with like Kathleen Kennedy as a devil or whatever, like Amandla Stenberg who played the lead in Acolyte as this whatever like rainbow haired woman. Like I was like, what the hell is this? Like he had enlarged their eyes to this like comical level, like. And I started to. It was fascinating to me. I knew I wouldn't like it, and I went to his channel, unsubscribed, and then I still clicked on the videos, just to see what the hell is he talking about. And then first the 5 seconds, he's like this woke whatever Disney, this and that, and that video already had racked up like 300,000-400,000 views. It was only on a day old for pop culture. That's pretty big, I guess. I think. And then that's not the only channel, but I saw like quite a few channels that I really liked that just really wanted to fan the flames for, really not in an objective way, like because I know, for example, those channels and the people who are behind those channels are capable of analyzing things, like processing things, talking about things in a much more objective way. Not 100%, I get it. Things can be subjective, especially when it comes to things like these. But I know for a fact that they are capable of doing that, but they are not. They're pivoting to whatever's making money or clicks or whatever, subscribers, and that was just really frustrating to me. Yeah, it's sad too.
But I mean, it's just a reflection of history, right? As long
Yeah,
as we've been around, we've always done that.
yeah,
We can't. It's part of our nature to be contrarian, to like, you know,
as always.
yeah, exactly. And I think now it's just the environment's changed. It's an
Yeah,
internet era, and it's the YouTuber, Patreon, GoFundMe, Kickstarter world we live in
yeah,
too. So absolutely, but it is fascinating how the studios have managed to stay one step ahead
yep,
too. And I absolutely think they are contributing to this. I mean, we got into this conversation talking about Zack Snyder, and if nothing else, I think I want to like walk out of this conversation saying that things like him moving forward, all of these things, it's always a studio that a corporate interest that kind of allowed it to happen. I think the pandemic didn't help. I mean, we can that's another thing we could talk about is the transition after the pandemic. But I think things like that. It's the what we're also seeing is with the writer's strike is a lot of assumptions from those at the top that they can sacrifice everything that makes this industry what it is, and they know that they will never lose the audience.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that kills my soul is that I know they are right. They can turn their back on movie theaters, they can turn their backs on, like, the writers who make the movies,
Yeah.
and they know that, when they turn out and produce Avengers: Doomsday with Robert Downey Jr. as
With
fucking
Russo's
Doctor Doom,
back.
and the Russo brothers who are, the equivalent of competent directors, very Zack Snyder. They're good enough. I don't see why they're, like that fucking movie they did with Tom Holland, Cherry
Cherry,
or
yeah.
whatever the hell it is. Like that sucked ass from what I heard too. Like the
Everything
Gray
else
Man,
they wrote or directed sucked. Except
yeah.
what they
After,
produced, because the
yeah,
movies like The Extraction were not written or directed by them, I
right,
think.
yes. Well, but that's the thing too. It's the first one versus the second one, and it's my only thing I liked about the second one was that it was like super into Georgia, like the
Yeah,
country
yeah,
Georgia,
they were.
and like half the cast were Georgians, and they
Yeah,
filmed in Georgia, and I was like, okay, that's like not
why
a
not?
place that I would expect to see in like a Hemsworth vehicle on Netflix, but all right.
Yeah.
But the thing with all of this is they're going to churn out their fucking Avengers next year with Robert Downey Jr., who got paid $85 million, and that movie's going to make bank. People are still going to watch it. And so, I mean, like the studios and the corporations, they have no interest, no reason to kind of take people seriously.
Yeah,
They have no reason because, us as people all over the world, we're so disorganized. We cannot have a majority that comes out and
yeah.
says, "No, we kind of instead of paying Robert Downey Jr. $85 million, why don't you like
Get
pay for 8, $10 million movies, like
yeah,
how about that? And
yeah,
like we can watch those, right? Because everything everywhere all at once, you mentioned it earlier. The budget was barely like $6 million, right?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
which is
Around
quite a
that.
bit,
Yeah,
but you know what I mean? Like it's not Avengers level, it's not Star Wars level. Like fuck, The Acolyte
yeah.
was like $60 million an episode
Yep.
for that. And so I mean, a part of me is going, look, I have my issues with this show. I couldn't even finish it. But it's like I didn't hate it because of the woke thing. I didn't hate it like because of all of that. I had my different reasons for disliking it. And you know what I did? I didn't finish the
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
I let myself get spoiled online. I just read and I went, "Oh, that's
Okay.
what they did?
Yeah,
Okay." Right?
yeah,
Like that's it. I just go, "All right." I mean, that's like it's a waste of money from what I was seeing.
yeah,
But I mean, I liked the show for the reasons most people hated it, and then I didn't like it for the reasons people seem to like it. So I don't know.
mm,
Sometimes, right? It's the human being. We
yeah.
can just be contradictory. We can just kind of be contrarian.
Yeah. The studios, they're not even that many now, right? Like Amazon
Exactly.
bought MGM, Fox obviously with Disney, and just
Well, and then Paramount
Skydance Paramount
and
thing. Yeah, actually,
and then Warner was thinking of buying
one
Paramount.
of those mergers that I think is actually good is Skydance and Paramount, because I think, David, is it David Ellison, Ellison's son, the Skydance studio head?
Uh,
Was it?
it might be. I
Yeah,
know that Ellison has 2 kids who are
yeah.
now in
They're
entertainment. There's
both
Megan, and then there's
yeah,
the
one of
brother.
them is Skydance, the other is Annapurna Studios, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think he cares about like the industry a lot. Like Skydance, when you look at Skydance's productions, they tend to be mainstream, but mainstream films with thought behind them. You know what I mean? Like they're not empty, like this weird empty shells that really wanted to, get as much
Mm,
money as they can. Of
mm,
course, money is important. I get that, but still, when you look at Skydance's like catalog, it's good. Like they care about making good blockbuster movies. When it comes to Tom Cruise has his problems, but still, their works, their films with Tom Cruise or other productions, they're really good. Like with J.J. Abrams too. So I think generally, like when you look at them at the deal from just the film fans' perspective, movie fans' perspective, I think it can be a good deal for Paramount, because when you look at where Paramount was heading in the last, I don't know, to 5 to 10 years, maybe excluding the pandemic, they were really, really going down. They were really falling fast.
Yeah, they were running out of IP, because they
Yeah.
had Star Trek movies, they had Mission Impossible, I think, right? But they had, and maybe Rocky too, but I think
Transformers too.
and then Transformers, but that's all like all of those IPs are drying up.
Yeah.
The Jonathan Majors stuff kind of caused Creed 3 to like be kind of quietly released,
Yeah.
So I mean, I get it. And then Star Trek is like all dried up. Now they're
Yeah.
reprioritizing TV to mixed results. So I get it. I do have a while you're speaking of Skydance, because I think they did with you mentioned Tom Cruise as well with the Mission Impossible. Now we're going even further away from this
Yeah.
initial topic, but I wanted to ask you your thoughts about part 1, part 2, part 3 movies, or movies that are
Yeah.
released in multiple parts,
Yeah.
right? So Harry Potter, speaking of J.K. Rowling and the identification of Potterheads, was what effectively kicked it off, right? Deathly Hallows Part 1, Deathly Hallows Part 2
Yeah.
became Hunger Games Catching Fire or Mockingjay Part 1,
Yeah.
Part 2, right? And it just
Twilight
created
did
this
that too.
whole Yes, Twilight Part 1, Part 2, that all just kicked off like
Yeah.
15 years ago, this thing. In 2024, we have Mission Impossible,
Dead Reckoning
no,
Part 1.
Dead Reckoning Part 1, which I'm now being told Part 2 has been rebranded to not have Part 2 in it. So we have a Part 1 and then just the next
Yeah.
film. And then we have Kevin Costner released Horizon
American Saga Chapter
American
1, 2.
Saga Chapter 1, Part 1 of 4, right?
Yeah, they're
Both of those
premiering the
movies
second one at TIFF too in a week or so.
oh god.
Yeah.
Well, okay, one of those movies I enjoyed quite a bit, and the other one was American Horizon Zero Dawn, whatever. That I don't know, that was a piece of shit. I really didn't like that Kevin Costner cowboy movie, which sucks because Kevin Costner makes good cowboy
Yeah.
movies. But that's my thing, though. Watching that Horizon Going West or whatever, I know I keep making references to those video games. But the thing is that movie was so clearly a part 1 in
Yeah.
a way that I'm not enjoying this. This is
Mm.
3 hours, 3.5 hours,
Of
and I
setup.
know it's a part 1, and it's all just set up.
Yeah.
There is no internal conflict, there is nothing being resolved. What is the point of this? Why am I watching this? Why am I not waiting for part 2 to come
Mm.
out? Then I'll just watch them back to back. Or better yet, why not just not spend any money, wait until all 4 parts have come out, and then watch it all together
Yeah.
so it's an actual proper thing.
Cohesive
You
thing.
tell me it's a part Yeah, exactly. You tell me it's a part 1, so I'm going, "Well, what the fuck?" Like, why am I going to see this? And I'll just wait, see it when it's out in home video, and then watch it before the final part, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the same. So it's like we're looking at these 2 films, critically very different outcomes, but financially, they both bombed.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's fascinating. So I was just curious, what do you think? Do you
So
agree
there
with me? Do you think the parts era, like 3D before it, has finally come to an end?
it's frustrating because there are very, very few times that are justified.
Mhm.
One example I would give is Dune.
Yeah.
It was obviously a part 1, and it left a few people frustrated because when it really felt like it was starting to get going, it ended with the Zendaya quote
Mhm.
and everything. But a lot of us fans of the book, or I mean, I actually read the book after the first movie, but people who were up to it, up to the information, who were aware of it, we knew it was going to be just half the book, right? Like, and then
Mhm.
it was going, like, we hopefully can get the second one made, and that was that. And I think they were both masterpieces. I think they were like whatever the most epic big film of our time is, like to whatever The Matrix was for the 90s, or Jurassic Park, or T2,
Interesting.
Judgment Day,
Oh,
or
very
Lord
well
of
said.
the Rings for the 2000s. I think Dune is that for the 20s. I really do think that. Maybe in 20, 30, 40 years, I hopefully Dune will be talked about in the same kind of level. I hope so. I really feel that way. And another similar example is Across the Spider-Verse. It was
Mm,
incredible. It was absolutely incredible. But better than it did better than Dune Part One is it has its own like beginning and ending, right? Like it, even though it really does set up another part, it still has its own like cohesive storytelling that it kind of ends in a sense.
sure,
I mean,
sure.
it doesn't completely, obviously, because it does set up a third movie where everything should come to a head, but still it kind of wraps up the thing in a way that's, at least I think, it's better than Dune, the first Dune one. So these are two movies that I think
To the
are,
point.
yeah, they're like really, really great. Even if anyone can
Mm.
not agree with me that they're masterpieces, but they're like, it's hard to argue that they're not great movies. Um, Other than that, it's hard. Like, I don't see the point of Dead Reckoning being a part one. I mean, I get it. It's, I love Mission Impossible movies. I love them, right? But like, did they need to be two parters? Like, they didn't really need to be two parters, right? But the thing was, they really wanted to. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think the original plan from Tom Cruise and Paramount uh, was to release it in the same year. I think that was the plan. If I remember
Mm,
correctly,
mm,
I think it
mm,
was like early 2023 and then late 2023. I think,
mhm.
because I remember. I think I remember that because it reminded me of The Matrix, Reloaded and Revolutions, because they
Mm.
both were released in
Yeah, they
2003.
came out right back to back. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So it reminded me of that. Maybe it wasn't in the same calendar year, but I think both were within 12 months of each other. You know what I mean? Like, even if they weren't in the
Mm,
same calendar. Yeah. And I think that was the plan. That's why they were part 1 and 2, but I don't see the point of movie like a Mission Impossible meeting that kind of like cohesion, or whatever you would call it. Like, I think Mission Impossible movies are just much better made Fast and Furious or Transformers or Jurassic Worlds of this world. I think they're just in the same
mm,
category, but they're just really well made. I think the stunts or the action or whatever, they're serious, as practical as whatever, however they can be. I think they're good in that. Other than that, they don't really need to have this kind of cohesive storytelling throughout, like, I
sure,
don't know, 2, 3, 4
sure.
movies. Like, look at John
That,
Wick movies, right? Like,
yeah,
they call them
the
chapter
chapters.
2, 3, whatever, but nobody cares. Like, nobody cares. You just go to a John Wick movie and you know what you're in for, right? Like, I think that's the point.
I mean, I guess so then the question is that what differentiates? Well, because I think in my mind, Dead Reckoning Part 1 is the anomaly because it by rights is a good film. I don't know why it
Yeah,
just did so poorly financially. Uh, I think, well, Spider-Verse made bank, the John Wick movies made bank, Dune movies, they surprisingly made bank.
yeah,
But I think it's hard. I can't go in and say, well, what differentiates them? Is it like the story itself? Is it the quality, right? Because it's all over the place.
yeah.
Uh,
I think
I
when you
think,
call
you
it,
know,
yeah. Go on. Sorry.
well, no, just for us when we're in the movies, what we're talking about is what that Horizon movie didn't have. It's like there needs to be a story that is contained within itself
Yes.
for it to be satisfying. To not have that really is what I'm questioning is people will just give up and they'll go, go home and they'll say, "Fuck this! I don't want to waste my time. I'll just wait for the thing to be done."
Yeah, I think it's the
But
same with a lot of movies like The Mummy or Battle Angel Alita or
sure,
whatever. They just want you to keep coming back for another thing, right?
mhm,
When you give that idea, not even in the film, like before the film, the whole marketing, like same with the Rebel Moon, right? Like, it's gonna be this trilogy, it's gonna have this animated show, it's gonna have this comic, it's gonna be this universe, like
mhm,
whatever cinematic pop culture universe. When you do
right,
that
right,
without even proving the first like few products, right? uh that's just like, I think audience people are used to that. Like, they're not going to be like, you know, blindsided by that these days, right? Like when you call call something part one, there's gonna be this and that. Like if you
Mhm.
put out a good movie, like that's what John Wick did. Like it was this random R-rated action movie with Keanu Reeves, who wasn't really doing great at the time, box office and pop culture wise, movies wise, and then directed by this, previous choreographers, fight choreographers. Like nobody believed a fight choreographer can direct a good movie. There's
Mhm.
no
Mhm.
precedent for that. And then it was good. Like everybody loved it for what it was. And then they called it this chapter two or whatever. I think the word difference between chapter and part and in content too is in the narrative too is that when you call it chapter, it's just a different book. You know what I mean? Like with John Wick, it's just fine. It's just another story in his whatever crazy adventures, right? It
Sure.
doesn't really connect to his previous stories, whatever. Nobody really gives a fuck about his wife or whoever
Well,
he,
you know that it's the
you know?
narrative, you know that the story's more contained.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's a
exactly.
chapter. Right,
Exactly.
exactly.
Yeah, you
So
don't have to watch the first two, three, whatever. You can just go in and John Wick and get the same thing you wanted. Maybe just bit more budget, has more budget or has Donnie Yen in it, which was awesome. But then with parts being parts, it's just you're asking you to commit more and more, like to
mm,
wait more, to commit more, to you know splash more money and attention. I think that's the problem with albums too. Like with the whole fucking Kanye West Vultures thing, it's just crazy.
yeah, I think absolutely. I think that's what well, with this Horizon thing, that's what I felt.
Exactly.
I was
Yes.
like, I'm
Yes.
going in, I know how many parts there are, and once I saw it, I went, "Yeah, this is a waste of time. I should not have done this." I thought I know it's a part of a bigger story. I'll just and I seeing that there was no satisfaction in it. It
Yeah.
wasn't self-contained or like a chapter. It was purely a part. I'm going, okay, I'm not gonna waste my time. I'll just wait for it to all be finished and then watch it together. That's how it should be seen. Because then I'm sitting there going, why even? It's like the Matrix thing. Why even do this? Why even separate them at all? There
Yeah.
is no sense of mystery really with that movie. I don't know if you've seen it.
No, I haven't.
And it sucked so bad. Oh god. There are 4 storylines basically, and then they're like, not really interconnected at all. Like, towards the very end, 2 of them start to intertwine, and then the other 2 start to intertwine. I'm like, "Oh my god."
Mm,
But it's like, I'm going, "Why even do this? It's so unsatisfying. Why not just do part 1 and 2, like, together,
mm,
and then 3 and 4 together," or something like that. It's like, releasing this in isolation on its own does it no favors.
mm,
People will go in confused, and they'll just like it because of the atmosphere of that time period, because nobody makes Westerns anymore. But I'm sitting there going, "This is like I wanna see more Westerns. I wouldn't mind trying to make a Western. I have no reason to get one made now after this shit. It's not
yeah.
making any money."
Yeah.
And it's like, what? And so, that's the thing too. And it's just absolutely, there's no reason for it to be that way. But
Mm,
again, studios have turned their backs on theaters.
yeah.
So it's like, Costner was championing this whole, movie theater experience, go for the vibe, go for and I'm sure it was a separate vibe, but like, it's a 3.5 hour movie. I'll be lucky if I can find a theater near me that's going to show it at all, let
Mm,
alone maybe once a day that's at a decent time. Like, that's the thing, the
yeah.
theaters have just no reason to. It was that battle always.
Yeah.
Our R-rated movies, because of the audience restrictions, always were allowed to be closer to 2 hours, where
Yeah.
anything that was general, you had to push it towards 90 so we could churn in as many
More
screenings per
screening.
day.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's like that films like that maybe were the exception. They just genuinely knew. He knew he was gonna maybe Costner's doing this Scorsese thing to circle back to what I said earlier. Maybe he's saying, "I'm at the end of my career. I'm not doing this for money
I'm
anymore.
just
I'm
doing
just doing it for
all
the."
in.
Yeah. It's the
Sell
love of the
sell my
game.
houses and everything.
But, I mean, it's like absolutely, that too, they were trying to cancel him, a minor offense, because they were saying he cast his son, his biological son, to play, like, a significant role. And they're like, "Well, what do you think about, like, why did you cast your son?" He's like, "Well, I mean, why wouldn't I? He's like, he's a good-looking guy, he's talented, he's my boy, he's my son, I know him, I know how to direct him."
Yeah.
And, like, I was like, "Oh, okay." But, right, it's that thing, you go your career long enough, and then you get into trouble, and people will try
Mm.
to find that trouble,
Yeah.
and it's
It's
how you
crazy.
react, how severe is the offense, right? I mean, it's very, very weird,
Yeah.
and I think with, like, Mission Impossible 2, it's very fascinating that that's also a longish movie, and I'm going,
Yeah.
is there this rejection of runtime again? Like,
Yeah.
but then we look at last year, Barbie was a fairly long movie, just shy of 2 hours. Oppenheimer was a
Dune.
super long movie. Dune, like,
All
these
the
are movies
Avengers
that are really
movies.
long. They're really long, and
Yeah.
they're breaking the bank.
Yeah.
So it's like we're also at this point, and maybe we weren't alive at the proper times in the '70s and the '90s. I'm sure the people that were would say, "Oh, but it's always been like this." It's just how quickly we catch on or how
Mm.
quickly, how intensely we discuss it back and forth has changed. But certainly now it feels like you can't really predict things anymore. You can predict that maybe more of a general audience is inclined to watch something historical or, not really thought-provoking, or are inclined to watch something that's comedic, right? Anyone But You, that brought back the rom-com apparently last year. I haven't seen it, but, it's like these discussions are being had, and I think what we're seeing is audiences, whether they're Mongolian or American, you can't really tap into what is a surefire thing that's gonna make them money.
Mm.
All I know is that the temptation to not innovate is there, and whether you are a Mongolian filmmaker with money or an American filmmaker with money, the last thing you wanna do is be innovative, which is a
Yeah.
great shame for an
Yep.
industry and medium that literally is all about creativity and innovation.
Yeah.
So,
That creates a great bow on it.
I think
Yeah.
so. I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
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 Is it me or do all of our conversations always have this kind of, like, sad undertone when we finish
They do.
because
They
it's
do.
like,
They actually do.
eh.
Yeah, I think it's because really I think it's because we love the art. I think we love the medium of cinema, the television too, and to an extent. You questioned earlier what is even television anymore these days. But I think
Yeah,
we
I know.
really deep down, like not deep down, we really love this form of art and what it means to us and what it can mean to us. I think
Mhm.
we just today we recorded a new episode of our podcast, right? Like right before we started. And on that episode we talked about The Illusionist. Jacques Tati's
Oh,
like
alright.
the legacy kind of, animation, right? The 2010 French animation. And the conversation we had was really like meaningful to us. I don't know how people will receive it as listeners and watchers of the podcast, but to us it was really meaningful. We talked about a lot of things, life. What can art do, to us, to make us think, to make us wonder about things, to childish
Mhm.
nature, to naivete, or trying to make a living, or what that must have been like at the time, because it's it's set in the 50s in Europe, right? London, Paris, and mostly in Edinburgh. But yeah, so that conversation was great. I think the reason where you and I are having all these conversations is, you know, like when it comes to it, the main thing is we love the art form, right? Like what it can do, what it can be experimented with, what it can innovate, how it can innovate, how it can make us feel, how it can help us learn, maybe even change us in a way, like they
Mhm.
have, and
Mhm.
when innovation stops or slows down, or people just follow wherever attention goes, the quality drops. Even quality of YouTube videos drop. You know what I mean? It's video
Yeah,
essays, quality essays even drop.
yeah,
That's
absolutely.
sad, and I think that's the tone that we have when we have these conversations. But you know, um, I think there are a lot of positives to take in the industry. A lot of great filmmakers and younger creatives that are coming up that have really different views on things, that
Mm,
are willing to break whatever ceiling there is for them,
sure.
for who they are. That's great. So if we're willing to find those works, those films, music, or whatever form of art there are, I think there are a lot of artists out there, that we can find and explore and see what they're trying to do and innovate.
Absolutely. I think ultimately we can't give up absolute hope yet either, because every year there is that like indie like darling film, that artsy art house film that makes it, whether it's like, a film like If Only I Could Hibernate.
Yeah.
I was gonna try the Mongolian, but my Mongolian's
Yeah,
so
it's fine.
rusty I
Don't
can't.
worry about it.
Balkay Boloksan.
Yeah.
All right.
Baga Bolson, yeah.
Yes, and whether it's that or like every year, every country has their movies, and it's just a question of platforming and access. Because
Yeah.
you were telling me, how can I find it? I don't think I can easily, if at
Yeah.
all. I think
Yeah.
I'd have to go to some alternative channels, which isn't good. I want to support the
Yeah.
arts, right? That's the only way. Anyone that is in Apex Studios, like Disney or whatever, the big ones in a country near you, right? It's kind of hard, but they're the only ones really in a position to wanna try and experiment or push the envelope, and a
Mm.
lot of times it's because they're going, "We know we don't have as much money to play with,
Yeah.
so we have to be very efficient."
Yeah.
There's a here in the States, there's a film that we're looking, to see, my wife and I, called Strange Darling. I don't know if you've heard of this one,
I
with Willa
think I've heard of
Fitzgerald,
it. Yeah.
Val Gallner, JT Mulner's second film. I mean, I'm trying to avoid it like the plague because I don't wanna get spoilers. I've come so close with that, and
Mm.
before Deadpool, I had so many things spoiled,
Mm.
and it's like, yeah, it's like, okay, the only way films like that will survive is if we go out and see it, or we find a way that we can pay them
Yeah.
legitimately so that they know. But then those
Definitely.
films, I get no marketing from them. I see nothing from them. I have no idea that these films exist.
Yeah.
It was just because on social media I followed the stars, the lead actress and the lead actor, that I was able to see, oh, okay, they had a little bit of promotion for it. And I was going, well, I don't know. It seems like it's a film that I have to travel far to see in a
Mm.
theater. And lo and behold, I did. So I mean, tomorrow I think if our schedule allows for our Labor Day, we're gonna, like haul it across the city to find
Mm.
like the one theater in our town that is showing it.
Mm.
So I mean, it's I guess on the one hand, it's good because the movies still exist,
Yeah.
right? On the other hand, it is, the industry doesn't help us as the consumer support those films.
Yeah.
And I don't want to think it's intentional, but all the evidence points to it being an intentional thing.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
like, "Well, but you see our box office at the end of the year, these indie films, our film division, they didn't make a lot of money." It's like, "Well, but did you throughout the year put in the effort? Not even money. Did you put in the effort to try and, like,
Support
help them
them.
succeed?"
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, that's the thing. So it's we're that at that point, it's impossible. There's no way we can actually catch the truth out of that. It's all he said, she said. But right?
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
It's the art will persist, but I do think, like, that's another we'll have another conversation about that too. I think media literacy of its kind, frankly, is just all over the world on a decline.
Yeah.
So I think absolutely things like a Snyder Bro cult emerging, a Donald Trump cult emerging,
Is due
defenders
to
of
that.
J.K.
Yeah.
Rowling, right? I think all of it absolutely is connected to varying degrees to this decline.
Yeah.
And I think when it comes to the realm of film, we are seeing it in
Mm.
a very unusually high and clear way. Like it is
Mm.
a very clear end result that because of the decline of critical curiosity, critical thinking, curiosity in mediums of all kind, we are seeing this kind of the end result post pandemic, especially the coffin, which is another nail. So
Yeah.
but I can't give up hope. I don't think you
Yeah.
are either, which is good. It's
Yeah.
good that we check in every now and then and see how do we feel emotionally invested in film as an art, you know?
Yeah.
All right. It's super early over there for you, isn't it, man? I
Uh,
appreciate you taking the
depends on
time.
your
We
perspective. It's 2 a.m. and it's
Yeah.
not early. It's late. No, because
Well,
yeah, I recorded like 3-4 hours of podcast just right before this. We were supposed to start earlier, and then the place we were supposed to record at, the door was locked and it didn't
oh, okay.
open. There was some malfunction with the door, and then
Okay.
like it took 2-3 hours to open. And
Oh,
our setup
Jesus.
was
So, yeah,
new. Like the
yes.
place is new because we never recorded there before, and we were recording with new equipment. We bought a new camera, new
Okay.
mics, whatever, a lot of new recorders, and the setting up with new equipment takes time too.
Right.
So today took a little more time than I was planning. So yeah, that's why I was late today.
No, it's all good. It's good. It's good. I mean, you were busy. I just didn't know the full extent of what was going
Yeah.
on with the front end.
There are
Oh man.
when it comes to like hopes and when art and hope, right? Like I really feel thankful to Neon and A24.
A24, yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I mean they have their duds, obviously they do, but still they really market the shit out of their films. Films
Hmm.
that are weird, films that are really interesting, that are completely crazy.
Sure.
Films like Lamb, Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I
Dream
love
scenario. Yeah.
yeah, I love that. I love those studios. Like, I really am glad that they exist. And I was sad to read that A24 was going to invest a little more to what we would call mid-budget, but 50 to 80 million dollar budget films that are targeted to make more money, because
Right.
as much as we love A24, they still need to make money. So not every one of their films are going to be everything everywhere all at once that makes money. So it was a bit sad to read, but at the same time I thought, like, maybe out of the 10 movies or 8 movies that they release a year, one of them could be that. And, maybe if that makes I don't know, 50 million bucks extra to them, maybe that's 2 more indie cool movies the next year,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
think it's great that we have those companies. I'm actually wearing my Triangle of Sadness
Yeah,
shirt
I
I
saw
got
shit.
from
Yeah.
Elon. So,
I saw
yeah,
that.
but I mean, the thing is, it's like it's not. I'm grateful for those companies, but I also feel bad for them because more and more responsibility falls on them, and
Yeah.
there's so few of them. Like
Yeah.
Shutter for the horror crowd. I mean, they're also really good, but it's like there's so few of them that I
Yeah.
understand they look at the landscape, they see what's happening in the industry, and they're going, "We don't necessarily wanna stay here forever,"
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Yeah.
So it's only fair. It's tragic when we
Yeah.
hear the news because we know why
Yeah.
A24 is pivoting that way.
Yeah.
And all we can do is hope that they haven't completely, sold out, as we would say, or, lost their way. And when they start pivoting to mid-budget, that, they take those potential box office revenues and then they reinvest it into the low-budget darlings, right? Because for those companies, those few companies that exist, there are so many more movies out there being made every
Yeah.
year, right? That will not even make it to the desk, the decision desk of A24 Shutter
Yeah.
and Neon, right? Because they're going, no, we already have our docket, or no, it's out of our budget or whatever. And it's hard, right? I mean, so many of them just never see the light of day.
Yeah.
They get lucky, they are lucky enough to be workshopped at like Sundance or whatever, but like, it doesn't mean that somebody's gonna come and say, all right, let's do a distribution deal
Yeah.
and let's find this film a home. So there oh god, who is it? I think it might have been, like, Kieran Culkin or something.
Mm.
There's somebody quite famous who, did an indie film
Mm.
that is on
With Jesse
year
Eisenberg?
2.
That one?
Might have been, I don't know. I think that film made it, but there was, like, another film
Mm.
that it took them, like, 2.5, and I think to a degree it's still ongoing. It's like, it's done, it's in the can, they finished it, and they cannot find a distributor.
Mm.
So, like, the only time people were able to see it was over the years at film festivals because it's the only place that they can see it because
Yeah.
it's the only place that's, allowed to screen it. And so I think you have this thing. It still happens. I think it
Yeah.
frankly always happened since the 90s, but, that's just it's tragic.
Yeah.
They're these
It is.
companies for their own reasons, but there's too few of them.
I mean,
And I
yeah.
don't know I don't know what the individual can do
Yeah.
to kind of, self-finance and self-release it. There's a
You know,
guy on YouTube,
Chris
right?
Stuckman. I was
He
going to talk about Chris
stuck
Stuckman.
well,
Are you
yes,
going to? Yeah.
yes. Well, I mean, he's an interesting one from the
Yeah.
critic side because, he's somebody who people were coming after, right? Because I think it's the jealousy and the
Yeah.
power dynamic.
Yeah.
He became very soft in his criticism of films, and we understood why.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of his content, my brother is, but it's like we understood why. He didn't wanna, ruffle feathers and piss off,
Yeah.
excuse me, future collaborators or people who would fund his future projects. But, like, there's another guy, Joel Haber, I don't know if you've heard of him.
No.
on YouTube. He's like his whole start was like 7 years ago. He started making like mid quality, high quality short
Mm,
films. They're usually comedic in
mm.
nature. He blew up in 2021, 22 because he had found this like animation, hand drawn animation style where you could shoot footage, live action footage, and then you go over and you create like really shitty quality
Okay.
animation, like rotoscope animation. And so he made those videos that were very funny and would use the errors in the AI technology for the punchline. He just got very good at it. And so that's why he attracted a lot of following. So he started shooting longer and longer and more collaborative videos, like short films that were 30 minutes, 40 minutes. He put them out on YouTube. And he was making some money, not a whole lot of money. But now, with like Patreon and all of that, he doesn't release short sketches anymore. He releases once a month or once every 2 months a full-length 90-plus minute film that
Whoa.
he had spent the previous month and a half shooting with his
Wow.
friends. And so that's the
That's
thing is
awesome.
like I right? Yeah, I'll share with you his channel. You can check out his
Yeah.
films.
Well, definitely do.
And they're all over the place in quality,
Mm,
and genre, but it's interesting, right? He put in the grind and like that's how he's doing it. But he I think relocated from I think he's actually from like Connecticut area like
mm.
me. And then he studied in Canada like me. And so I it got too close. So I don't watch his full lengths because I feel like he's the me that I wanted to be or something. But he I think relocated to New York, whereas I'm in DC now. But he relocated to New York, and I think he's trying. I don't know how aggressively he's trying to make it as a filmmaker, but I wish him all the best. Not that my it means anything, but like I don't know what kind of traction he's making, whether he moved to LA or in New York. I don't know how much success he's seeing in terms of breaking into that industry. It's such a what we say fickle, right? It's such a bitch for no reason
Yeah.
other than to just be a bitch.
Yeah.
But right, it's like I look at him. He's one example of
Mm,
somebody who has no stable representation or stable backing.
yeah.
And then I look at these companies, and then I go, the companies are here. He's over here. Why is there no like more aggressive and visible middle ground?
Yeah.
Because these companies are there for a reason, and it's impossible really to figure out what they're thinking and how to get in touch with them. Because A24, for example, has a New York office, a London office, and an LA
Mm.
office, and they all focus on different shits.
Mm. I donated to the Kickstarter whole thing with Chris Stuckman when it first was
Oh yeah?
announced. So I
Okay.
am part of that. Yeah, and
Wow.
it was really good to hear that he got the film off the ground. He started shooting it, and a lot of money was coming in, which was really good. I think the whole Kickstarter thing ended at what, like 1.5 million or something.
Ooh,
W-
wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think around that at least. I think, and it was pretty good. And then the biggest thing was the producer announced on the Kickstarter group, the Discord, the movie Discord, that they got a distribution deal with Neon. Like that was incredible. Like Neon, right? Like not in just
Yeah,
the
yeah.
states, globally. Like Neon is a big thing now. Like obviously not big as the bigger studios, but still, right? Like we were just talking about Neon and A24 and them. And so that was awesome. And then Mike Flanagan signed on as an executive producer,
Right. Yep,
which,
yep.
like, Mike Flanagan and his reputation as a horror, master of these days, these times. It's awesome. So I can't wait for that movie. I really hope it's good. I'm not really looking forward to it being like great or I have like this great expectation or whatever. I just hope it's like decent. You know what I mean? Like, I hope it's decent enough that it gets Chris Stuckman his career start. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
absolutely.
yeah,
I think that's a great topic to kind of let's put a pin in that.
yeah,
I think we can talk about it later.
yeah,
We
definitely.
can talk about before Stuckman's movie is out or after. I think I want to talk to you about that,
Mm,
like critics churned
yeah,
filmmakers and like how that's changed over the years from like the French New Wave in the
mm,
60s to like now and what it means. Absolutely, because I think it's big, and as somebody who is not a fan of his work and as a YouTuber, I'm curious to see
mm.
if he learned anything through the proxy. Because
Yeah,
last thing, and then I'll let you go because it's super late over there or early where you are. The guy who did the channel Every Frame of Painting.
yeah. He just got back.
So he went into retirement for like
Yeah,
5 6 years, and he just came back because he's releasing short film himself.
yeah,
So I'm curious to see what that film is And like, does he embody the things that he was talking about? His revival series of videos, in effect, is his promotion campaign for this
Yeah.
short. And so I think all the topics of technicality that he's getting into, he's trying to show that he's reflected and done it for his film. But like, right, that's another example
Yeah.
of a YouTuber who came first as a YouTuber and then filmmaker. And it's like, okay, is the product good? Or like maybe are we biased because we liked how he worked as a YouTuber? So I really would like to pick your brain sometime about that.
Yeah.
But
I'll
today at that time, I gotta let
yeah.
you go.
Yeah. Let's talk about that later on, because that's an interesting topic that we can research on, read more about on before going on to record it, and then also we already have like a few interesting opinions, I'm pretty sure. So it's gonna be great. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we'll stay in touch about that, man.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. So
I'll write.
thank you for taking time for this.
Hey, we had a lot to cover. It's
Yeah.
been a while.
Yeah.
It's always kind of a long convo
Yeah.
when I'm
Love it. Love
involved,
it.
I know.
Yeah, I love that. I love that there's no like, you know, specific bullet points that we have to. I mean, there are a few things, but there are no like, limits to this. So I really like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It was good catching up with you.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
missed
me
you.
too. Me too.
It was time and distance in life was just keeping, you were doing your thing, I was doing mine. So I'm glad that we can kind of touch base this way too.
Yeah, me
And
too.
it's
Me
for
too.
the benefit of more than just you and me. I hope your listeners enjoy. I
Yeah,
know it's been
me too.
forever, and
It's
I'm
been a
sorry.
while.
It's a lot of English. So
Yeah, it's been a while for me. It's been a while since I did anything in English for this long. Because I don't really use my English that much, I guess,
well, I
these days.
understand.
So
The environment over there doesn't need it. So
yeah.
you know what? When I'm more settled and I can pick up Mongolian again, we can try a real shit podcast in Mongolian. It's my
Yeah,
but
you're
yeah.
welcome to try it.
Oh goodness, yeah.
Yeah, all right. All right, all right. So
Alrighty, yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna go and edit the previous podcast, and thank you for making time for this. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
I hope everyone who's listening at this point is have enjoyed it, and
Yeah,
mm,
that's my hope too.
yeah.
Yeah, I'll write you the letterbox on Insta, and I'll let you
Yes.
know what's going on my end with the social media too,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
yeah, I'll send you all of that stuff.
Okay, I'll put it in the
Alrighty,
description too. So thank you.
cool. Yep,
All right, see
my
ya. Talk
pleasure.
to you later.
Yep,
There's gonna
yeah,
be
absolutely.
different things that we can talk about. So hopefully, anyone who's listened to this can look forward to that too.
Yeah. I think there's plenty more happening. All
All
right,
right,
Russ,
all
take
right,
care, man.
all right. Bye.
Yeah, sleep well. Bye.
Yeah.